It was a high-stakes moment. The crowd buzzed with excitement, cameras flashing like an endless sea of stars. At the front of the room, Elon Musk sat next to his mother, Maye Musk, at a press conference where they were unveiling a new project, one that was set to change the future of space exploration. The room was packed with journalists, industry leaders, and influencers, all waiting to hear the details. The mood was electric, but little did anyone know, this was about to take a very unexpected turn. Elon Musk, the tech mogul and CEO of SpaceX, Tesla, and numerous other ventures, had built a reputation for his calm demeanor, even in the most intense situations. He was known for thinking several steps ahead, always cool under pressure. His mother, Maye Musk, a renowned model and dietitian, was by his side, as composed and poised as always. The two shared a unique bond, one that had been forged through years of trials, triumphs, and unconditional support. The event was supposed to be a celebration of innovation and progress. However, it was about to become something else entirely. A journalist, a well-known figure in the media, raised her hand for the next question. She was known for her sharp wit and biting commentary, and her reputation for stirring the pot was both admired and feared. With a sly grin on her face, she turned to Elon and his mother, ready to ask her question. The room fell silent in anticipation. "So, Elon," she began, her tone playful yet cutting, "you've built rockets that take humans to space, and you're revolutionizing electric cars. But let's talk about the real star here, your mother. She's clearly the secret behind your success. How does it feel to be the son of a model and dietitian who, well, has outshone you in many ways?" Laughter rippled through the room. The audience didn't know how to react. Some chuckled nervously, others stared at the journalist with raised eyebrows. The comment was clearly meant to be humorous, but it cut deep. Maye Musk's eyes flickered for a moment, a slight change in her expression that was almost imperceptible, but Elon noticed. Elon Musk, usually unflappable in these situations, froze for just a second. He had heard people make jokes about his mother before, but this time, something was different. The tone was mocking, disrespectful even, and there was no mistaking the subtle but pointed attack. The room, which had once been filled with excitement and anticipation, now felt heavier, the air thick with discomfort. Maye Musk, ever the professional, remained silent, her face showing no outward signs of anger or upset. She was used to the attention, both positive and negative, that came with being in the public eye for decades. But the way the journalist had framed her question, joking about her role in Elon's life, struck a chord with him. Elon's eyes shifted from Maye to the journalist. The smile on the journalist's face, which had once seemed so playful, now seemed forced and cruel. He could feel the tension in the room building, a pressure that threatened to explode. He wanted to say something, to retaliate, but he paused. His mind raced, and for a moment, he thought about how to respond. His mother had always been his rock. She had been there for him in the darkest times, supporting him when his businesses were on the brink of failure, when people doubted him. Maye Musk was the one who had taught him the value of resilience, of standing tall no matter the circumstances. She had built him up when he was at his lowest, always with love, patience, and strength. And now, this journalist, in front of the entire world, was mocking her. His mind flicked back to his childhood, the long hours she had spent nurturing him, the sacrifices she made, and the lessons she imparted. His love for her surged in that moment, a fierce protectiveness that burned hotter than the camera's flash. The room was silent. Every eye was now on Elon Musk, waiting for his reaction. What would he do? Would he ignore it, or would he stand up for his mother? Elon took a deep breath. He could feel his heartbeat in his chest. He could feel the anger rising, but he knew that reacting impulsively wouldn't solve anything. His mother had always taught him to approach challenges with calm and thoughtfulness, not to let emotions control his actions. For a brief moment, the tension was unbearable. The crowd leaned in, sensing that something was about to happen. Elon Musk stood up, slowly and deliberately. Every eye in the room followed his movements. The sound of the chair scraping against the floor seemed amplified in the silence. The journalist, sensing the shift in the room, looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. She wasn't expecting this. Elon didn't speak immediately. Instead, he turned his attention to Maye. His gaze softened as he looked at her, his protective instincts kicking in. He could see the faintest flicker of a smile on her lips, as if she knew what he was about to do. Maye Musk, he began, his voice calm but firm, is not only an incredibly successful woman in her own right, but she is also the person who made me who I am today. She taught me the value of hard work, kindness, and never giving up. So, with all due respect, I don't appreciate your tone or your disrespect toward her. She deserves better. The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Silence hung in the air for a heartbeat, then the buzz of conversation started. The journalists around the room were stunned into silence. Some were already typing away on their phones, eager to capture every word, while others exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond. Elon stood there, unwavering, his eyes fixed on the journalist. It was clear that he wasn't finished. He had taken a deep breath and gathered himself, ready to address the situation head-on. Everyone in this room is here to talk about innovation, about the future. But there is one thing that no innovation can replace, and that's the love and respect we owe to the people who raise us, support us, and believe in us when no one else does. My mother has done all of that and more. Maye Musk, hearing her son's words, looked at him with a mixture of pride and gratitude. The room was still, every person in it processing the gravity of what had just happened. Elon Musk, in that one moment, had done something that no one expected. He had publicly stood up for his mother in a way that no one could ignore. The journalist, flustered, stumbled over her words. I didn't mean. Elon held up a hand. It's not about what you meant, he said, his voice steady. It's about how we treat each other. And in this room, we should treat each other with respect. So, let's move on. The room was still buzzing, but it wasn't the same. The tension had shifted. Elon Musk had surprised everyone, not by reacting with anger, but by showing a level of respect and maturity that commanded attention. It was a moment that would linger in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it. As he sat back down, his eyes never left Maye's. She smiled at him, a small, knowing smile. In that moment, nothing else mattered. His mother had raised him to be strong, to face challenges head-on, and to protect what mattered most. And today, in front of the world, Elon Musk had done just that. The incident would become the talk of the media for weeks to come. But for Elon, the story wasn't about the spectacle or the headlines. It was about family, respect, and doing what was right, even when the world was watching. And as the press conference continued, everyone knew one thing for certain: Elon Musk's reaction had left a mark. It had shown the world that sometimes, the strongest response is the one rooted in love. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? As the press conference continued on, the world would soon be buzzing about Elon Musk's public display of loyalty toward his mother, Maye. But what many didn't know was that this moment didn't just spring from a sense of protective instinct, it was the culmination of years of a special bond, one that was built on love, sacrifice, and, above all, resilience. To understand why Elon reacted the way he did, it's necessary to take a step back. His journey, one of incredible ambition and success, was deeply intertwined with his upbringing. The Musk family story had always been one of perseverance, a reflection of how family can be the backbone of one's ability to navigate life's most challenging moments. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, Elon's childhood was far from typical. His father, Elon Musk, was an engineer, but Elon's relationship with him had always been strained. Elon recalled his father as a distant figure, someone who believed in tough love but often appeared cold and aloof. Growing up in the shadow of a man who was not particularly affectionate or supportive had left Elon feeling as though he had to prove his worth from a young age. But there was one person who never doubted him, never made him feel like he wasn't enough: his mother, Maye Musk. Maye was a woman of incredible strength, both physically and emotionally. A model, dietitian, and businesswoman, she was a force in her own right, and her resilience shaped Elon's early years. It was Maye who taught him the importance of never giving up, no matter the obstacles in life. In the early days, life wasn't easy for the Musk family. Maye had been a single mother for much of Elon's childhood, working hard to support her 3 children. Despite the challenges of raising 2 boys and a girl, Maye remained steadfast. She was an exceptional multitasker, modeling on the side, working as a dietitian, and finding ways to provide a comfortable home for her children. And when Elon's entrepreneurial dreams began to take shape, she supported him with unwavering belief, even when others doubted him. "I remember my mom always saying, 'Elon, you can do anything if you put your mind to it,'" Elon once said in an interview. "She never allowed me to think small, even when things were tough. She always told me to dream big." When Elon was 10 years old, he became obsessed with technology. He had always been a curious child, the kind who would take apart his toys to figure out how they worked. But his passion for computers and coding emerged when he got his first computer, a Commodore VIC-20. He taught himself how to program by reading books and experimenting with different codes. He created his first video game, called Blaster, at the age of 12, selling it for $500 to a local magazine. While most parents might have been perplexed by their child's growing obsession with computers, Maye was nothing short of supportive. She knew Elon had a special mind, and she encouraged him to follow his passion, no matter how unconventional it seemed. It was this kind of encouragement that pushed Elon to eventually leave South Africa for North America in pursuit of greater opportunities. Maye believed in his dreams when no one else did, and she never stopped championing him, even when his goals seemed far-fetched. But Elon's ambition didn't come without sacrifices. When Elon left for Canada, Maye was left behind in South Africa, watching her son chase his dreams. It was a difficult decision, but she understood. Maye's own life had been a constant balancing act of working hard to provide for her children while also pursuing her own career. Yet, despite her personal challenges, she had always managed to be a constant presence in Elon's life. Even after he left for North America, she remained an unwavering pillar of support. As Elon's ventures grew, so did the pressure. He had become the face of multiple startups, working tirelessly to build his businesses from the ground up. But even in the midst of his soaring career, he always found time for his family. His relationship with Maye remained close, with regular calls and visits to keep their bond strong. She would travel to visit him and his growing family in the United States, often lending advice not just on business but also on life. Her wisdom, her calm demeanor, and her unwavering support continued to be a constant source of strength for Elon. Despite his accomplishments, Elon had always been candid about how difficult it was to be successful. He openly admitted that his journey had been fraught with setbacks. The first major hurdle came when he co-founded Zip2, a software company that aimed to help newspapers create an online presence. Though Zip2 eventually sold to Compaq for nearly $300 million, the path to success was not a smooth one. Elon had to fight for recognition, and he faced multiple rejections and doubts along the way. But Maye was there every step of the way. She never hesitated to offer him guidance or a shoulder to lean on. Even when Elon was at his lowest point, when he was nearly broke and facing bankruptcy, she believed in him. Elon's feelings of inadequacy in those times were made easier by his mother's gentle encouragement. Maye reminded him that no matter how many times he fell, he could always get back up. By the time SpaceX and Tesla were born, Elon had become a household name. His companies were now at the forefront of the tech industry, and his success was undeniable. But even with all the fame and fortune, he never lost sight of what truly mattered: his family. When his private life became the subject of public scrutiny, Elon's relationship with his mother was never questioned. It was a bond that was unbreakable, formed through years of shared experiences, sacrifices, and a deep mutual respect. Maye, for her part, had her own challenges. As a model in her 60s, she was often faced with ageist stereotypes. Yet she pushed through them, proving that age was no barrier to success. Her career in the modeling world was revitalized after she turned 60, landing major campaigns and becoming a symbol of empowerment for older women. This was the woman Elon had always looked up to, a resilient, determined, and fiercely independent woman who had taught him that success wasn't just about fame and fortune, but about having the courage to be yourself, regardless of what the world thought. Elon's reaction at the press conference that day wasn't just about defending his mother from an insensitive comment, it was a reflection of years of love, admiration, and respect. It was his way of showing the world that, no matter how far he had come, he would never forget the woman who had shaped him into the person he was. In the months that followed, the media attention surrounding the press conference would fade. But for Elon, the lesson remained clear. No matter how much success he achieved or how many new frontiers he conquered, Maye Musk was the one person who would always keep him grounded, reminding him of where he came from and the values that truly mattered. Maye had always been his greatest supporter, and that day, in front of the entire world, Elon had returned the favor. The incident at the press conference would linger in the public eye for days, sparking countless discussions across social media platforms, news outlets, and industry forums. Elon Musk's reaction to the journalist's comment about his mother had not only shocked those who witnessed it but also shifted the narrative of the event itself. What was supposed to be an unveiling of his latest groundbreaking projects had, in many ways, become a reflection of his character and his deep-seated values. But as the buzz began to fade from the headlines, the implications of that moment would soon become clear to both Elon and Maye. The tension had only just begun. For Elon, the feeling of defending his mother publicly had ignited something within him, a sense of justice and protectiveness that he hadn't fully acknowledged before. He had always been known for his relentless focus on technology, space exploration, and pushing the boundaries of innovation. But in that instant, his focus had shifted towards something far more personal, family. And it wasn't just about standing up for Maye anymore, it was about recognizing how deeply his values were intertwined with the people who had always stood by him. Back in the comfort of his office in Palo Alto, Elon sat alone at his desk, his thoughts running a mile a minute. The press conference had been over for hours, yet his mind was still replaying the moment. He could still hear the journalist's voice, hear the mocking tone in her question. But what struck him most was the look on Maye's face. Despite her poised exterior, he could see the flicker of hurt in her eyes, something that had happened before, but something that had never been so public. He picked up his phone, unlocking it to check the flood of messages that had arrived since the press conference. Most were from his family, offering support and expressing pride. But there were also the less friendly messages, comments from critics who saw his reaction as a display of arrogance, some suggesting that Elon was too sensitive, that he shouldn't have taken the question so personally. Elon leaned back in his chair, running his fingers through his hair, as a deep sigh escaped his lips. He knew there was no pleasing everyone, but the weight of the criticism still gnawed at him. He wasn't used to being publicly challenged, at least not in this way. For years, he had been a figure who remained above the fray, someone who stayed focused on his goals, brushing off petty insults and distractions. But this time, things felt different. Maye's name had been dragged into the conversation, and that had crossed a line. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from his younger brother, Kimball. "Great job today, bro." That was exactly what Maye needed. "Proud of you." Elon smiled faintly, but the emotion didn't quite reach his eyes. He hadn't spoken to Kimball in a few weeks, but their bond was one of mutual respect. Kimball had always been a steady presence in his life, a grounding force when Elon's ambition threatened to consume him. Before he could reply, his assistant knocked on the door, announcing that the next meeting was about to begin. Elon glanced at the clock, it was already late afternoon. Another day, another mountain of decisions to be made. As he walked into the conference room, he was greeted by his team, engineers, project managers, and advisors who were all working toward the next phase of his SpaceX project. The discussion was focused on logistics for an upcoming rocket launch, the next major milestone in his quest to colonize Mars. But Elon's mind was elsewhere. His focus was scattered. His thoughts kept drifting back to May and the painful words from the press conference. It wasn't just about the incident, it was about something deeper. There was a feeling of unresolved tension that Elon couldn't shake. Across the room, Gwynne Shotwell, the president and COO of SpaceX, caught his eye. She had been by his side for years, a trusted ally and someone who had helped him keep the company grounded amid its rapid growth. Gwynne had witnessed firsthand the challenges Elon faced in both his personal and professional life, and she could tell that something was off. "Elon," she said, her voice sharp and clear. "You're not here. What's going on? We need you focused." Elon blinked, snapping back to the present. His gaze shifted to Gwynne, then to the team around him. He could feel the weight of their stares, the subtle tension in the air. He knew that they were all aware of what had happened at the press conference. Word traveled fast in Silicon Valley. "I'm fine," Elon said, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. "Just thinking about some things." Gwynne wasn't convinced. "You can't let this stuff get to you. You've got a mission, and it's bigger than any of this." Her words were meant to be supportive, but they only added to the pressure Elon was already feeling. He didn't want to let anyone down, especially not his team. But the truth was, this was more than just a passing distraction. The comments about May had stung, and they were stirring something inside him, a desire to finally address a part of his life he had kept hidden for so long. As the meeting continued, Elon's mind drifted again, back to his childhood. Back to the nights when May would sit beside him, comforting him after he had faced another setback at school or in life. Her words of wisdom, her quiet support, had always been there when the world seemed too much to bear. He thought about how, despite the ups and downs, she had always remained a beacon of strength. But what had made him feel so compelled to protect her in that moment at the press conference? He had been the one in the spotlight for years, and May had always supported him, rarely seeking attention for herself. Yet, when her integrity was questioned, something inside Elon snapped. His thoughts were interrupted when the meeting wrapped up, and everyone stood to leave. He walked out of the room slowly, the weight of his inner turmoil still pressing on him. He had done what he felt was right, but he hadn't expected the emotional toll it would take. He needed to talk to May. Not just about the press conference, but about everything. He needed to reconnect, to remember why he had gotten to where he was. Because deep down, he knew that all the achievements in the world wouldn't mean anything without her. She had been his foundation, and it was time he reminded himself of that. As he walked to his office, his phone buzzed again, this time with a message from May. "Elon, I saw what you did today. Thank you. You always know how to take care of me. Let's talk later, okay?" A sense of relief washed over him. No matter the chaos that surrounded them, no matter the challenges they faced, Maye Musk had always been there. And in that moment, Elon knew that he would continue to stand by her, no matter what. The rising tension between his personal life and the outside world was only just beginning. But for now, one thing was certain, his journey was no longer just about rockets or cars, it was about understanding the depth of family, loyalty, and love. And that, perhaps, was his biggest challenge yet. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of media attention, public speculation, and growing tensions that Elon hadn't anticipated. While the press conference had sparked a wave of debate over his reaction, it had also unintentionally put Maye Musk at the center of the spotlight. In the days that followed, journalists and commentators began to question her career, her influence, and whether she had somehow shaped Elon's public persona. It wasn't long before May's own social media presence grew by thousands of followers, and the media outlets were asking more about her than ever before. But Elon couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. What had started as a moment of protective instinct had turned into an almost invasive public obsession with his mother. And the more he watched the media dissect her every move, the more uneasy he became. One evening, after an exhausting day of back-to-back meetings, Elon sat alone in his office at Tesla's headquarters. The room was dark except for the glow of his computer screen. His thoughts raced, each one heavier than the last. It was a rare moment of solitude for him, a time to reflect and make sense of everything that had transpired since the press conference. He stared at the screen, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He had received a series of new headlines that night, each one dissecting his personal life and the drama surrounding Maye. It seemed like everyone had an opinion about what had happened, and what should have happened. Some called him a hero for standing up for his mother, while others criticized him for being too sensitive and out of touch with reality. The public's reaction was expected, but the shift in focus, away from his work, his innovations, and toward his family, was unsettling. Elon had always prided himself on his ability to stay focused on the mission, to keep the distractions at bay. But now, his personal life had become part of the narrative. It wasn't just about SpaceX or Tesla anymore. It was about his mother, his relationships, and whether he was truly the man people thought he was. As he sat in his office, the door to his office suddenly swung open, breaking his thoughts. He looked up to find Gwynne Shotwell standing in the doorway, her face serious, yet sympathetic. "Elon, we need to talk," she said. He motioned for her to come in. "About what?" Gwynne took a deep breath and stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "About the press. About Maye. About all of it." Elon leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. He knew this conversation was coming. Gwynne had been with him through thick and thin, and she had always been the one to tell him what he needed to hear, even when it was hard. "I know you're upset," she began, sitting down across from him. "But you've got to understand, this isn't just about what happened at the press conference anymore. It's about how you're being perceived, and how Maye is being perceived. People are curious. They want to know about your family, about your life. It's not just about your work anymore." "I didn't ask for any of this," Elon replied, his voice tinged with frustration. "I just wanted to defend my mom. I didn't want the focus to shift to her like this. It's not fair to her." Gwynne nodded in understanding. "I get it. But you can't control how the media spins things. You have to think about the bigger picture. This could be an opportunity for you, for Maye, even. You've always said you wanted to leave a legacy. Well, this is part of it. Your family, your story, it's all intertwined with the work you do. People want to know the personal side of you, the side that they don't get to see. And right now, Maye is at the center of that." Elon sighed, feeling a headache begin to form. "I never asked for any of this," he muttered again. Gwynne leaned forward, her expression softening. "I know. But sometimes life takes unexpected turns. You can't plan everything. You've worked hard for the success you've achieved, but now you're in a position where your influence goes beyond just your company's. You've become a public figure, and with that comes a different kind of responsibility." Elon rubbed his eyes, trying to process everything Gwynne was saying. She was right. Whether he liked it or not, his life had become a spectacle, a subject of intense interest, whether it was about his technological innovations or his personal life. But he didn't want his mother caught in the middle of it all. "Have you spoken to her?" Gwynne asked, breaking the silence. Elon nodded. "We talked a little. She's handling it better than I am, to be honest. She's been through this kind of thing before. But I can tell she's not thrilled with the attention. I hate that she's being dragged into all of this. She's tough, though," Gwynne said with a smile. "She's dealt with more than most people could even imagine. And I'm sure she's proud of the way you stood up for her. But you've got to find a way to balance your personal life and your public life, Elon. You can't just bury your head in the sand and ignore what's happening." Elon took a long, deep breath, his mind finally beginning to clear. I'll talk to her again. Maybe we need to address this publicly, I don't know. I just don't want her to feel like she's being used as a pawn in some media game. Gwyn leaned back in her chair, nodding thoughtfully. I think that's the right move. Just be honest with her. And be honest with the public, too. They'll respect you more for it. You've built your entire career on transparency. Don't lose that now. Elon stared at the floor, contemplating her words. She was right, he had always believed in honesty and openness, even when it wasn't convenient. Maybe it was time to embrace the narrative, rather than run from it. But the thought of putting more of his personal life out there made him uncomfortable. As Gwyn stood up to leave, she added, whatever you decide, Elon, just remember, you've got a whole team here that's got your back. And Maye, too. Thanks, Gwyn, Elon said quietly, watching her leave the room. Sitting alone again, Elon's thoughts drifted back to the press conference and the look on Maye's face. He thought about how, for the first time in years, he felt like his personal life was just as much a part of his identity as his work. The unexpected twist of the public's focus on his family had caught him off guard, but it also made him realize something important. No matter how much he achieved in the tech world, his relationship with Maye, and the lessons she had taught him about resilience and love, was the true foundation of who he was. The rising tension between his work, his family, and the public's expectations had only just begun. But if there was one thing Elon knew, it was that he wasn't one to back down from a challenge, no matter how unexpected it might be. Days passed, and the ripple effects of the press conference continued to echo across Elon's life. What had initially been a simple act of defending his mother had transformed into something much larger, an event that stirred both admiration and disdain in equal measure. The media's gaze remained fixed on Maye Musk, scrutinizing her every word and action. For Elon, it was as if the world was not just watching him anymore but watching the people he cared about most. It was a reminder that in the public eye, even the smallest ripple could become a tidal wave. The press, as always, had found their angles, dissecting Maye's public persona and asking questions about her past. They questioned the nature of her relationship with Elon, wondering how much influence she had over his decisions and whether her opinions shaped his business ventures. Some articles praised her strength and the way she had raised Elon, while others dug deeper, attempting to unravel secrets they thought lay hidden. Elon, on the other hand, had been thrust into a more complicated role than he had ever expected. Not only was he managing his empire, but he was also in a delicate balancing act, trying to protect his mother's dignity while not allowing the media storm to tear his family apart. The pressure of navigating his professional responsibilities alongside personal emotions had begun to take its toll. But it wasn't just the media attention that weighed on him. There were moments, when he was alone in his thoughts, that he questioned whether he had done the right thing by stepping in so publicly. Had his actions been driven by a genuine desire to protect Maye, or had he acted impulsively, reacting in a way that perhaps wasn't the most productive for his company, for himself, or even for Maye? It was these conflicting thoughts that consumed him as he walked through the hallways of SpaceX's headquarters late one evening. The offices were quiet, the usual bustle of the day replaced by a hushed calm that seemed to reflect his inner turmoil. He entered his private office, the one place where he could shut the world out. He sat at his desk, staring blankly at the open folder before him. The plans for the next Mars mission were laid out in front of him, a reminder of the larger vision he was chasing. But his mind wandered again, drifting to the events that had unfolded. As the hours passed, the door to his office creaked open, and a familiar voice broke his reverie. Elon. It was Maye. Her presence had always been calming, but tonight, there was something different in her voice, a softness, perhaps tinged with exhaustion. Elon looked up, surprised to see her standing in the doorway. He hadn't expected her to come by, especially after the whirlwind of media coverage that had surrounded them. But her quiet, unspoken strength was something he had always admired, and seeing her now, he felt a deep wave of gratitude. "Hey, Mom," Elon said, standing up from his desk. I wasn't expecting you. She smiled gently and stepped inside. Her presence filled the room in a way that was both familiar and comforting. May had always known how to navigate difficult situations with grace, and even now, in the midst of all the chaos, her calm demeanor remained unshaken. I thought we should talk, she said, her tone calm but direct. About everything that's been happening. About how we're feeling. Elon sat back down in his chair, gesturing for her to take a seat. As she sat across from him, he couldn't help but notice the subtle change in her. Despite her age, her sharp eyes and steady gaze made her seem unbowed, as if the years had only made her more resilient. I don't regret standing up for you, Mom, Elon began, his voice quieter than usual. But I'm not sure I've handled this whole situation the right way. The press, all this attention. It feels like it's spiraling out of control, and I didn't think it would affect you so much. May gave a soft chuckle, a sound that warmed Elon's heart. Elon, you've always been the protector, haven't you? She said, her smile thoughtful. I can see it in your eyes, the way you care for your family, the way you fight for what you believe in. It's who you are. And I know you've always wanted to shield me from the public eye. Elon nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had exposed her to a world that wasn't always kind. I just want you to be okay. This whole thing, it's just so much, isn't it? I don't want the focus to be on us in this way. Not because of something trivial. It's not trivial to you, Elon, May said, her voice growing more serious. It's not trivial to me either. But the way the world sees us. That's out of our hands. What matters is how we handle it, how we stay true to ourselves, no matter what the world is saying. Her words struck a chord deep within him. There it was again, her wisdom. May had always been the anchor in his life, the one person who never wavered, no matter the storm. And now, even in the midst of the media frenzy, she was reminding him that the focus on their family was just a moment, a passing storm. What mattered most was how they responded to it. I didn't want to drag you into all of this, Elon said, his voice tinged with regret. But now that it's out there, I just want to make sure you're okay. May reached out and placed a hand on his. Her touch was warm and steady, a gesture that conveyed everything she didn't need to say. I'm fine, Elon, she said softly. You've always had my back. I've watched you grow, watched you become the man you are today, and I'm proud of you, always. But don't let this moment change who you are. Don't let the world make you second-guess the things that matter. Elon felt the weight of her words settle within him, the emotional gravity of the moment bringing clarity. It wasn't about pleasing everyone, or even about controlling the narrative. It was about staying true to his values, to the people who mattered most, like May. She was his foundation, and through her guidance, he could see the way forward. A wave of emotion swept over him as he looked at her, her calm eyes reflecting the understanding that he had been searching for. His mother had always been the one to help him make sense of the chaos that swirled around him, and once again, she had done so with nothing but her wisdom and unconditional love. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. You don't need to thank me, May replied gently, her smile as warm as ever. Just remember what you've learned, and what I've taught you. Elon sat back in his chair, feeling a quiet sense of resolve take root. The media storm was far from over, but he was no longer as consumed by it as he had been. What May had said resonated deeply within him, this moment, this attention, it was fleeting. What mattered was how he responded to it. The lessons he had learned from his mother were more important than any headline or social media post. And with that clarity, Elon made a decision. It was time to speak out, to share his side of the story, to acknowledge the love and loyalty he felt for his family. This wouldn't be a moment of weakness, but one of strength. And the world, for once, would see the Musk family for who they really were. Not the spectacle the media had turned them into, but the people who had shaped each other's lives in ways that no one else could understand. This was just the beginning of the emotional journey ahead. And as the evening came to a close, Elon knew one thing for certain: whatever came next, he was ready. The following days unfolded with a sense of clarity Elon had been desperately seeking. The whirlwind of media attention was no longer as overwhelming. The constant chatter, the endless commentary, he had managed to find a way to block out the noise. With Maye's words echoing in his mind, he knew the next step was to take control of the narrative, not for himself, but for the people he cared about most. At the same time, the pressure of maintaining his public image and protecting his family weighed heavily on him. The decision to address everything head-on, to make a statement of his own, felt like the right thing to do. It was a strange feeling for Elon. He was used to crafting plans for rockets and Mars missions, not to dealing with the media's insatiable hunger for personal stories. But he knew it was time to redefine the story the world was telling about him and his family. On a quiet morning at Tesla headquarters, Elon sat in a conference room with Gwynne Shotwell, his trusted COO. The media buzz was constant, but it had begun to settle into a predictable rhythm. He knew what they were saying, that Elon Musk was either the hero or the villain of the story, depending on who you asked. But it was no longer just about him, it was about the family he had worked so hard to protect. "Elon, I know you've been thinking about this," Gwynne said, as she shuffled some papers in front of her. "It's time to make a statement. You've been quiet for too long, and the longer you stay silent, the more speculation will take root. The longer you keep hiding, the harder it will be to control." Elon nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had always preferred to work in the background, pushing the boundaries of technology and innovation. But this moment wasn't about technology. It wasn't about rockets or electric cars. This moment was about him, his family, and how they were being misrepresented. It was time to step into the spotlight, not as the billionaire entrepreneur, but as a son who had defended his mother. "I agree," Elon said, leaning forward in his seat. "I don't want this to spiral any further. I need to speak directly to the public, share the truth, explain why I did what I did." Gwynne looked at him with a mixture of concern and respect. "You're not doing this for validation, right? It's not about defending your ego. It's about your family." Elon met her gaze. "Exactly. It's not about me. It's about Maye. She didn't ask for any of this. And now it's up to me to make sure people understand who she really is, not some pawn in a media game. She's strong. She's independent. She deserves better than being treated like a footnote in my story." The decision was made, and the following morning, Elon released a carefully crafted statement on his social media platforms. "Over the last few weeks, the public has been fascinated by the relationship between my mother, Maye Musk, and myself. I want to take this moment to clarify something important. My defense of my mother was never about seeking attention for myself, nor was it an impulsive decision made in the heat of the moment. It was a simple matter of family loyalty. My mother is an incredible woman. She's not just the mother of one of the world's most well-known entrepreneurs, she's an accomplished businesswoman, a model, a nutritionist, and a mentor to many. What you may not see in the headlines is the countless sacrifices she's made and the quiet strength she's shown in her life. It's easy for people to reduce others to caricatures, to twist stories to fit their narrative. But Maye Musk is not a side character in my journey. She is my foundation, and she's been there for me through every challenge, every success, and every setback. I owe much of my resilience to her. I'm proud of her. I will always stand by her. And while I don't often discuss my personal life, I felt it was important to set the record straight. This is not just about defending my family, it's about respecting the truth. The truth about who we are, as individuals and as a family. Thank you for your understanding." As soon as the post went live, the response was overwhelming. The flood of comments on Twitter and other social platforms was immediate, with people praising Elon for his transparency and for defending his mother in such a public way. Some media outlets even picked up the statement and reshared it, acknowledging that Elon's move had been unexpectedly human, a side of him they hadn't seen before. But not everyone was impressed. There were still those who felt that Elon was playing a public relations game, trying to redeem himself in the eyes of the media. Some took the opportunity to criticize him for using his mother as a shield in the face of negative publicity. Yet, even among the skeptics, the narrative began to shift. It became less about the spectacle of his defense and more about the family dynamic he was so fiercely protecting. Elon knew that he couldn't control every comment or every headline. But he had done what he set out to do, he had shared the truth. And with that, he could feel the pressure begin to lift, just a little. The media would find something else to focus on in time, and the story would evolve, just as all stories did. But for now, the storm had passed. The most important thing was that he had said what needed to be said. He sat back in his chair, a sense of relief washing over him. But there was one more thing he needed to do. He had to talk to Maye, to make sure she understood why he had taken such a public stand. That evening, he found her at their favorite restaurant. The place was quiet, with soft lighting and a relaxed atmosphere that felt like a safe haven from the madness of the outside world. Maye was already seated when Elon walked in, a serene smile on her face. He sat down across from her, not needing to say anything at first. They both knew why they were there. "I did it," Elon said quietly. "I made a statement." Maye's smile grew a little. "I saw. And I'm proud of you. You did the right thing." Elon took a deep breath. "I just wanted people to know the truth. You don't deserve to be treated like an afterthought. You're so much more than that." She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "I never thought I was an afterthought, Elon. But I appreciate your words. You've always had a way of seeing things that others can't. It's one of the things I admire most about you." Elon's heart swelled with gratitude. For the first time in weeks, he felt at peace. The journey ahead was still uncertain, and there would likely be more challenges, more scrutiny. But with Maye by his side, and with his own sense of clarity restored, he knew he could face whatever came next. They sat there for a while longer, talking about everything and nothing at all. The world would keep turning, and the media would find a new story to latch onto. But in that moment, it was just the two of them, no headlines, no cameras, just family. And that, Elon realized, was all that truly mattered. Despite the calming effect of the public statement, the ripple effects of Elon's decision were far from over. While some of the media had begun to move on to other stories, there was a lingering intensity that Elon couldn't shake. The storm of public opinion had settled for the moment, but a deeper undercurrent was brewing. Over the next few weeks, Elon found himself getting asked the same question repeatedly: what comes next? It wasn't just the media that was asking. His colleagues, friends, and even members of his family were eager to see if this public stand would change the direction of his personal and professional life. Tesla's stock had been volatile, and SpaceX was preparing for its next big mission. Despite the chaos, Elon had never been one to shy away from challenges. But now, there was a personal challenge that was difficult to ignore: his reputation. He couldn't help but think of the journalists who had mocked his mother, those who had made it their mission to belittle her, or worse, reduce her to a side character in his narrative. For a while, it had felt like a battle he had to fight in the open, and it felt like he had won. But now, Elon realized, the emotional toll was catching up with him. The press conference had been a pivotal moment, but it had also cracked open something deeper within him, something he hadn't been prepared for. A part of him had always known that he was perceived as a larger-than-life figure, but defending Maye had made him realize how little people understood about his personal life. The media painted him as a man of contradictions, a visionary, but also unpredictable, erratic, and sometimes unapproachable. There were days when the weight of that narrative felt like a chain around his neck. Sitting at his desk late one night, Elon received a call. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice on the other end was unmistakable. "Elon, it's Amber," the voice said, his ex-wife. Elon's first instinct was to brace for another round of complicated conversation. Their relationship had been through its fair share of ups and downs, but they had managed to maintain a civil, even friendly, dynamic. "Amber, what's going on?" Elon asked, his voice weary. He had always respected her opinion, even when their paths had diverged. She was someone who could always see the broader picture, and Elon was hoping this call would bring a dose of clarity. "Look, I saw your statement. The one you put out about Maye," Amber said. Her tone wasn't accusatory, but it carried a weight of concern. "You did the right thing, standing up for her. But, you know, things are starting to get complicated." Elon leaned back in his chair, feeling the tension of her words seep into his bones. He was prepared for the criticism, but he hadn't expected it from those closest to him. "Complicated," he repeated, trying to mask the surprise in his voice. "Yeah," Amber said, with a sigh. "It's not just the press. It's the way people are starting to look at you. You've always been the tech visionary, Elon. But now, it's like you're more of a person to them. And that's dangerous. People don't know how to deal with that. You've made yourself vulnerable, and now they want to see how far they can push you." Elon paused, letting her words sink in. He hadn't thought about the vulnerability in those terms. To him, the act of defending Maye had been natural, necessary. It hadn't occurred to him that, by revealing such a personal side of himself, he might have shifted the way the world viewed him. "I don't know what I expected," Elon said quietly. "But I didn't expect it to feel like this." "Yeah, well, that's the thing about vulnerability, Elon," Amber replied. "It's a double-edged sword. People start to feel like they know you, and then they think they can control the narrative. It's a game, and you're in it now. Just be careful how much you share, okay? You have a habit of overexposing yourself to the world." Elon's fingers tapped on the desk, his mind racing. He had always been open about his ambitions and goals, but he had never been quite so open about the things that mattered most to him on a personal level: his family, his roots, and his vulnerabilities. "I'll keep that in mind," Elon said, a hint of gratitude in his voice. He respected Amber's perspective, even if it came with a sharp edge. As the call ended, Elon leaned back in his chair again, reflecting on everything that had transpired. He had tried to protect his family, but now he was beginning to realize how much his actions were tied to his public image. Being vulnerable in front of the world hadn't been a choice, he had done it out of necessity. But the reality of how it affected his life and the lives of those around him was something he hadn't fully understood until now. Maye had always told him that family came first. In a world where everything seemed to be measured by success, wealth, and public perception, it was easy to lose sight of what truly mattered. And for the first time in a long time, Elon began to wonder if there was a way to find balance between his public persona and his private life. The next day, Elon gathered a few of his closest advisors at Tesla's headquarters. Gwynne Shotwell, who had seen the highs and lows of his career, sat across from him, waiting for him to speak. Elon had been quiet for most of the morning, his mind preoccupied with the consequences of his actions. He knew the company's trajectory had to remain his focus, but something had shifted within him. He needed clarity, on both his personal life and the way forward with Tesla and SpaceX. "Gwynne," Elon began, "I need to talk to you about something." "Of course, Elon," she said, sensing the seriousness in his voice. "I think I need a break," he said, the word surprising even him. "Not from work, but from all the noise. I need to get away, recalibrate. I've been so consumed with the media's focus on me, on my family. I need to refocus on why I'm doing all of this in the first place." Gwynne nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I understand. The public spotlight can be overwhelming, especially when it feels like it's coming at you from every angle. But taking a break isn't a sign of weakness. It's about resetting. I think it's a good idea." Elon looked at her, grateful for her support. "I'm not going to disappear, but I do need some space to think, to regain perspective." I can't let the outside world dictate how I feel or what I do. Gwyn smiled slightly. It's good to have that awareness, Elon. I think this could be just what you need. Elon stood up, a sense of determination filling him once again. I'll still be involved, of course. But I'm going to focus more on the core of what drives me. And that's building the future. As the meeting came to a close, Elon felt a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in weeks. The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: he wasn't going to let the media or public opinion dictate his path. It was time for him to reclaim control of his life, and in doing so, his purpose. The challenges would continue, but with a clearer sense of direction, Elon felt ready to take on whatever came next. And perhaps, for the first time, he was beginning to understand that the balance between personal and professional life wasn't something he needed to achieve all at once. It was a journey, just like the one he had always been on. Elon Musk had never been one to shy away from work. His entire career had been built on the foundation of hard work, innovation, and pushing boundaries. However, the events of the past few weeks had taken a toll on him. For the first time in a long while, the pressure of both his professional and personal lives was overwhelming. The decision to take a break was not an easy one, but it was one that Elon knew he needed. He was going to slow down for a bit, not to disappear, but to clear his mind and regain his perspective. He chose to retreat to a private cabin in the mountains, far away from the constant hum of technology, media, and the endless demands of his empire. It wasn't a vacation, but rather a time for introspection, a moment to regain his balance and take stock of his life. He could still hear the world around him, but here, it was muffled, distant. It was quiet. The cabin was modest, with large windows that looked out onto snow-capped peaks, rugged landscapes, and a dense forest that seemed to stretch forever. It was far removed from the world he had built, and that's exactly what he needed. The silence, the stillness, gave him the space to reflect. He wasn't sure if he had ever taken a moment like this in his entire life. Sure, there were moments of respite here and there, but they had always been fleeting, always interrupted by the next big thing. As he sat by the fire, staring into the flickering flames, Elon thought about Maye. He had always admired her strength, her resilience, and the way she had built her own path in life. In many ways, she had been a guiding figure in his own life, teaching him that family was not something you took for granted. And yet, there had been moments where he had taken her support and love for granted. He wasn't proud of that, but the pressure of his work often made him distant, both physically and emotionally. Elon's thoughts wandered back to his childhood, the long hours spent in front of a computer, the hours upon hours of books, the hours of isolation. It wasn't something he often thought about, but in the silence of the cabin, the memories crept in. He remembered how his mother, Maye, had always been there, silently supporting him even when he was too absorbed in his world to acknowledge it. She had always believed in him when no one else did, and even now, despite everything, she still stood by him. As the wind howled outside, Elon couldn't help but wonder if he had been so focused on building the future, on creating companies that would change the world, that he had neglected the present. He had always been driven by a desire to make a difference, to push humanity forward, to get people to Mars. But in doing so, he had forgotten something crucial: the importance of the people who were with him on this journey. He wasn't sure where things had gone wrong, whether it was the endless demands of his work or the weight of being in the public eye. But what he did know was that something needed to change. Maybe it wasn't just about the grand ideas or the projects that dominated his every waking moment. Maybe, just maybe, it was about the people he loved, the ones who had been by his side through thick and thin. The realization was a quiet one, a subtle shift in his thinking. He didn't need to abandon his mission. He wasn't going to suddenly stop trying to push the limits of what humanity could achieve. But perhaps he needed to do it differently. Perhaps he needed to bring balance into his life. As the days passed in the cabin, Elon spent a great deal of time contemplating his future, not just as a businessman or a tech mogul, but as a father, a son, a friend, and as someone who needed to grow beyond his public persona. He began to understand that he couldn't keep pushing without pause, without acknowledging the toll it took on his soul. Maye had taught him the value of strength, but also the importance of being present. She had shown him that success wasn't just about the end goal, but about the people you brought with you along the way. One afternoon, as Elon sat by the fire, a thought crossed his mind: perhaps the next step in his journey wasn't about further pushing his companies or technology. Perhaps it was about taking the lessons from this time of solitude and using them to lead in a different way. A way that was more connected, more human, and more mindful. He decided that it was time to have a real conversation with his mother. That evening, as the night grew dark and the wind picked up outside, Elon dialed his phone. The cabin was quiet, but for the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of peace. The sound of the phone ringing echoed through the cabin. When Maye's voice finally answered, it was like hearing the voice of a friend he hadn't seen in a long time. "Elon," Maye said, her voice warm as always. "How's the retreat going?" "Better than I expected, actually," Elon replied, the weight of the past few weeks lifting from his shoulders. "I've been thinking a lot." "About?" Maye asked, clearly curious. "About everything, really," Elon said, pausing for a moment to gather his thoughts. "I've been so focused on the future, on Mars, on Tesla, on SpaceX, that I've been neglecting what's right in front of me." Maye was silent for a moment, probably letting the words settle in her mind. "You've always been driven, Elon," she said softly. "You've always wanted to push the boundaries, and I admire that. But I also know that it's easy to lose yourself in all of it. Sometimes, the hardest part is taking a step back and understanding what's really important." "I know," Elon said, his voice quiet. "I've been so caught up in the mission, in proving myself, that I forgot about the people who helped get me here. You, Dad, the kids. I've been so absorbed in the work, and I'm realizing that I need to make time for you all. I can't keep letting my work take precedence over everything else." Maye smiled, and even over the phone, Elon could hear the warmth in her voice. "You don't have to apologize, Elon. You've always had big dreams, and I know you've been doing it for more than just yourself. But don't forget that we're all here, too. We've been here through all of it." Elon felt a knot loosen in his chest. "I'm sorry I haven't been there as much as I should have. But I'm ready to change that." There was a long pause on the line, and then Maye's voice came through again, steady and reassuring. "I know you'll find a way to balance it all. You've always been capable of amazing things, and I'm proud of you. But remember, life isn't just about the work. It's about the people you share it with." Elon sat back in his chair, feeling the weight of her words sink deep into his soul. "Thank you, Mom. I needed to hear that." And for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of resolve, not just about the future of his companies, but about the future of his life, his relationships, and his sense of self. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but now he knew that he didn't have to face it alone. As the fire crackled softly in the background, Elon smiled to himself. The quiet had given him something more than just peace. It had given him clarity. And for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face whatever came next, with a new sense of balance, and with those who mattered most by his side. After several weeks of solitude, Elon Musk returned to the public eye. His time away from the limelight had allowed him to reflect on his priorities and to recalibrate his approach to life and work. The quiet had given him much-needed clarity, but now, it was time to return to the world he had built, one that was constantly demanding his attention, whether he liked it or not. When he re-emerged, it wasn't with grand announcements or a new breakthrough product. Instead, Elon took a more measured approach. He began by addressing his followers on social media, something he hadn't done much in recent weeks. His return tweet was simple yet powerful, taking time to reflect. "Let's continue to build a better future, together." The response was immediate. Some were thrilled to hear from him again, while others wondered if the break had changed his focus. Had Elon Musk, the relentless entrepreneur, softened? Was the public figure they had come to know evolving into someone new? The following days brought more questions, more inquiries from journalists, and more curiosity from investors. What did this moment of introspection mean for Tesla and SpaceX? Would his companies change the course of their missions? What about the highly anticipated Mars project? Elon knew he would have to address these questions head-on. One afternoon, as he sat in the Tesla boardroom preparing for a major presentation, Gwynne Shotwell walked in, her expression a mix of professional concern and curiosity. "Ready for the media frenzy?" she asked, a light laugh escaping her lips despite the seriousness of the situation. "I guess it's unavoidable," Elon replied, his tone calm. He had learned that with every significant moment of vulnerability came a heightened level of scrutiny. But this time, he felt more equipped to handle it. His time away had given him the perspective he needed. It's not about avoiding it. It's about shaping the narrative. Gwynne nodded. "Just be yourself. People will want to know what's changed. But, whatever you say, make sure it's true to who you are right now." Elon looked at her for a moment, taking in her words. Gwynne was always direct, and that's one of the reasons he trusted her. In many ways, she had always been a stabilizing force in his life, someone who had seen the evolution of Tesla and SpaceX from the ground up. If anyone could help him navigate this new chapter, it was Gwynne. The press conference was scheduled for the following afternoon, and the world was waiting. The next day, Elon walked into the press conference room, a crowd of journalists, camera operators, and analysts waiting eagerly for his words. The room was packed, and as soon as he stepped onto the stage, the buzz of whispers and flashing cameras grew louder. He could feel the weight of the eyes on him, but this time, there was a sense of calm. The usual pressure, the looming expectations, no longer felt like an insurmountable mountain. Instead, it was just noise. Noise he had learned to filter out. Taking the microphone in his hand, Elon stood at the podium, glancing out at the sea of reporters who were poised, pens ready, waiting for the first words to spill from his lips. "Thank you all for being here," Elon began, his voice steady. "I've had the privilege of spending the last few weeks reflecting on what's truly important to me. And I think it's time to have a more open conversation with all of you." The journalists exchanged quick glances. Elon's tone was different from what they expected, no deflections, no distractions. They were used to his bold statements, his larger-than-life personality. This felt different. More grounded. Real. "As many of you know, I've been in the public eye for a long time," Elon continued. "And over the years, I've become someone who is always looking ahead, whether it's the next launch or the next big technological leap. But in the process, I've sometimes lost sight of something more fundamental: balance." There were murmurs in the crowd as people processed his words. Elon knew that this was the moment where he could either fully embrace the new direction he was taking, or retreat into his old ways. "I've spent so much time focusing on the future, on Mars, on making the impossible possible, that I've neglected the people around me, the ones who matter most," Elon continued, his voice not wavering. "My family, my friends, my team at Tesla, SpaceX, and all of the people who support these ventures. I've realized that we can't create a better future unless we have a solid foundation here, in the present." He paused for a moment, allowing his words to settle. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Elon had always been a visionary, but here he was, showing a different side of himself, vulnerable, honest, and human. "I'm still committed to our missions. SpaceX will continue to push humanity towards Mars, Tesla will continue to innovate in sustainable energy, but I've learned that these things don't have to come at the expense of the people who are supporting this journey. From here on, I plan to strike a better balance." A reporter in the front row raised their hand, eager to ask the first question. "Mr. Musk, do you think this shift in focus will affect your company's ability to meet their goals? Specifically, how will this affect the timeline for Mars and Tesla's growth?" Elon's gaze softened as he looked directly at the reporter. "I don't think it will affect our goals at all. If anything, I believe this shift will make us stronger. When you're at the helm of a company or a mission, it's easy to get lost in the race. But if you're not aware of the people who make it all possible, you lose sight of the big picture. We'll continue to innovate, but with a renewed sense of clarity and connection. There were more questions after that, about Tesla's upcoming models, SpaceX's next mission, and how the shift in Elon's personal life might affect his professional commitments. Elon answered each one thoughtfully, never straying from the message he wanted to convey. He was still the same person who had dreamed big, who had pushed boundaries, but now, he was learning to do so with a greater understanding of the importance of balance. As the conference came to a close, Elon felt a sense of relief. The weight of the past few weeks had been heavy, but he had finally found a way to share his truth with the world. There was still a long road ahead, but for the first time in a while, he felt like he was heading in the right direction. Walking out of the room, Gwyn gave him a small nod of approval. "Well done," she said, her voice steady and reassuring. Elon nodded back, feeling a sense of gratitude. The path forward wasn't going to be easy, but at least now, he felt prepared to face it with a new perspective, one that was focused not just on changing the world, but on creating a world that was worth living in. As the days passed and the media cycle moved on to other stories, Elon continued his work at Tesla and SpaceX. But now, there was something different about the way he approached it. He was still Elon Musk, the man who wanted to make a difference, but he was also someone who understood the value of family, of connection, and of staying grounded in the present. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. In the weeks following the press conference, Elon Musk's life slowly began to shift. The media storm surrounding his personal revelations started to die down, but the impact of his words lingered. People weren't just focused on the future of his companies anymore. Instead, they were interested in seeing how he would translate his newfound introspection into real, tangible changes. For Elon, the challenge wasn't just about managing his businesses. It was about maintaining the balance he had promised himself. The pressure to continue leading Tesla and SpaceX remained, but now, there was a sense of purpose in his approach. He had the weight of both the present and the future on his shoulders, and he was determined to carry it with grace. One afternoon, while reviewing plans for Tesla's upcoming electric truck release, Elon was interrupted by a phone call from his mother, Maye. It had been a few days since their conversation, and although their talk had provided him with clarity, he hadn't had the chance to reach out to her as much as he would have liked. His work, as always, had been relentless. "Hi, Mom," he answered, picking up the phone and settling into his office chair. "Elon, how's everything going?" May's voice was warm, but there was an undercurrent of concern, something she couldn't fully hide, despite her best efforts. "It's going well, actually. I'm adjusting, to the balance thing we talked about," he replied, half smiling to himself. He could hear her exhale on the other end of the line, as if she had been holding her breath. "I'm proud of you," she said, the pride in her voice unmistakable. "I know it's not easy, especially with everything you've been juggling. But I can hear it in your voice. You sound different, in a good way." Elon leaned back in his chair, contemplating her words. It wasn't something he had expected to hear, but it was exactly what he needed. "Thanks, Mom. I think it's just a matter of taking it day by day," Elon replied. "I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to find a way to make this work. Not just for me, but for the people around me, too." "I know you've always been driven, Elon. You've always wanted to push the limits," Maye said, her voice soft but firm. "But remember, you don't have to do it alone. You have people who want to help, people who believe in you. You've built a world of possibilities, but don't forget the people who have been with you from the beginning." Elon let her words sink in, his mother's steady voice grounding him once again. The silence between them stretched for a moment before he spoke again. "I'm learning that, Mom. It's just hard, I've spent so much time focusing on the next big thing that I've forgotten to be present for the things that matter most." Maye didn't immediately respond. Instead, there was a gentle pause, as if she was letting him process his own thoughts. Finally, she spoke with that signature steadiness only a mother could provide. Remember, Elon, the world you're trying to create, whether it's through Tesla, SpaceX, or any of your ventures, it's not just about technology or innovation. It's about people. The connections, the relationships. That's what will truly make a difference in the end. Her words hung in the air, echoing with a truth he had often overlooked in the whirlwind of his ambitions. It wasn't just the world-changing ideas he was passionate about, it was the people who would live in that world, who would experience the fruits of his labor. That was the heart of it all. I hear you, Mom. I really do. And I'm going to work on it, Elon replied, a new sense of resolve in his voice. Later that week, he met with Gwynne Shotwell at Tesla's headquarters. The two of them had spent countless hours together, working through various challenges that came with running a high-tech company, but today, their conversation felt different. Gwynne, Elon started, sitting across from her at a large conference table. I think I need to make some changes to how we operate, not just at Tesla, but across all my ventures. She raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Go on. I've been reflecting a lot, and I think we've been so focused on the big picture, the end goals, the innovations, that we haven't paid enough attention to the way we work together, as a team. I'm realizing that to truly create the future I want, it's not enough to just push for progress. We have to be a more cohesive unit. We need to make sure that the people behind the technology feel just as valued as the technology itself. Gwynne was silent for a moment, absorbing what Elon was saying. She had always admired his visionary nature, but she also knew how easily he could get caught up in the whirlwind of progress, sometimes at the expense of his team's morale. I think you're onto something, she said finally. Tesla's culture is a huge part of why we've been able to succeed, but we can always improve. There's room to make sure that every person feels like they're part of something bigger, something that they can be proud of, not just in terms of what we're building, but in the way we treat each other. Elon nodded, appreciating her insight. Exactly. I've been so fixated on making the next breakthrough, but I don't want to forget that it's the people who will make that breakthrough a reality. And I want them to feel just as empowered as the technology we're creating. I agree, Gwynne said with a smile. I think if we focus on that, we can make Tesla not just a company that leads in innovation, but one that leads in how we treat each other, too. It was a small but powerful shift in thinking. Elon didn't want his companies to just be known for their revolutionary products, but for the culture they cultivated, a culture where people felt seen, heard, and appreciated. The next step was clear. Elon began reaching out to key members of both Tesla and SpaceX, not to talk about their projects or upcoming deadlines, but to check in with them on a personal level. He asked how they were doing, how their families were, and what they needed from him as a leader. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was genuine, and that made all the difference. As he made these small but significant changes in how he led, the ripple effects became apparent. Employees at both companies felt more connected to the larger mission, and the energy at Tesla's headquarters seemed lighter, more collaborative. The drive to innovate was still as fierce as ever, but there was a new sense of harmony and purpose that made everything feel more meaningful. Elon wasn't perfect, and he knew he would never have it all figured out. But with every step he took to create a more balanced, human-centered approach to leadership, he felt a little more like the person he wanted to be. Someone who could inspire greatness, not just through his ideas, but through his actions and the way he treated the people around him. It was a long road ahead, filled with challenges and unknowns. But for the first time in a while Elon felt ready to face it, not alone, but with the support of those who mattered most. And that, he knew, was the key to making his vision a reality. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk had always prided himself on his ability to solve complex problems, whether it was revolutionizing electric cars, developing reusable rockets, or thinking about the future of humanity on Mars. But now, in the aftermath of his personal revelations, the challenges he faced were more human than technological. They required him to be a different kind of leader, one who was more present and more in tune with the people around him. It wasn't an easy transition. Every day, there were moments of doubt. The pressures of maintaining the success of his companies, coupled with his newfound focus on improving his personal relationships, were a delicate balancing act. But Elon was determined to make it work. One of the first major tests came when a significant crisis emerged at SpaceX. The company's latest mission, a crucial test flight for a new spacecraft designed to transport astronauts to Mars, had encountered an unexpected problem during the launch sequence. A software glitch had caused a temporary delay in the countdown, and there was growing concern about whether the mission could proceed as planned. Elon was immediately contacted by Gwynne Shotwell, who was at the SpaceX Control Center. "Elon, we've got a situation. We're looking at a potential delay with the Mars-bound mission. The engineers are working on it, but we need your input. The clock is ticking." Elon could feel the familiar rush of urgency flooding his system. This wasn't just another project, this was one of SpaceX's most ambitious missions, and the stakes were incredibly high. The media was already buzzing with questions, and if the mission were delayed, the fallout would be significant. "Tell me everything," Elon said, his voice sharp but calm. He was no longer the leader who would panic in the face of crisis. He had grown. "We've run the diagnostics, and it's a software issue, not hardware. The team is confident they can fix it, but it's going to take some time. Right now, we're looking at a delay of about 3 hours, Gwynne explained. Elon took a deep breath. In moments like this, his first instinct had always been to push harder, demand faster solutions. But the new version of Elon Musk, the one who had spent weeks reflecting on what really mattered, knew that this situation called for a different approach. "All right, get the team together and make sure everyone has what they need," Elon said, his tone decisive but measured. "Tell them not to rush. We've got to make sure the job is done right. If we have to delay, we delay. But we get it right." "Understood," Gwynne replied. As Elon sat back in his office chair, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. There was a time when he would have been frustrated, maybe even angry. But now, there was something deeper in him, a quiet strength that came from understanding the importance of patience, of supporting his team through moments of uncertainty, rather than pushing them beyond their limits. Later that day, as the issue was resolved and the mission was back on track, Elon received a message from one of his senior engineers, Paul, who had been part of the team working on the fix. "Elon, I just wanted to say thank you for your leadership today. You handled that crisis differently. I think the team appreciated the way you gave us the space to work without pressure. It made all the difference." Elon smiled as he read the message. It was one of those small moments that told him he was on the right path. He had been the same Elon Musk, the one who was always ready to face any challenge head-on. But now, he was a leader who recognized the importance of balance, one who understood that pushing for innovation didn't have to come at the expense of the people working to make it happen. "Great work, Paul," Elon typed back. "Thanks for staying focused and getting us through that." The mission went off without a hitch after the delay, and the successful launch was celebrated as a major milestone for SpaceX. The company's progress toward Mars seemed more promising than ever, and the public's response was overwhelmingly positive. But for Elon, the true success wasn't just in the technical achievement, it was in how his leadership had evolved. As the months passed, Elon's balance between personal reflection and professional drive continued to influence how he approached both his companies and his relationships. He worked closely with Gwynne, working together to foster a company culture that encouraged collaboration and mutual respect. He took time to recognize the efforts of his employees, from the engineers to the administrative staff, understanding that their contributions were integral to the success of his vision. Elon also made sure to carve out more time for his family. He began spending weekends with his children, not just as a father who was there physically, but as a father who was emotionally present. He had been absent for so long, chasing dreams that often left little room for the people who loved him most. But now, he knew that no achievement, no matter how monumental, was worth sacrificing those precious moments. He had even started having dinner with Maye more frequently. Their conversations, once centered on his ambitions and business, began to shift toward more personal matters. They talked about their shared memories, their dreams for the future, and the moments of joy that made life worth living. At the same time, Tesla continued to innovate. The launch of the new electric truck was a massive success, with demand surpassing expectations. Elon was pleased with the vehicle's design, but more than that, he was proud of how Tesla had evolved into a company that wasn't just about the cars they produced, but about the people behind those cars. The culture at Tesla had shifted as well, employees felt more connected to the mission, and the sense of shared purpose was palpable. But as the year came to a close, there were still challenges ahead. There were questions about the future of Tesla's solar projects, the next phase of SpaceX's Mars initiative, and how Elon planned to balance all of his ventures moving forward. Even with all the progress he had made, there was a growing realization that true leadership was a lifelong journey. One evening, while walking through the Tesla campus, Elon reflected on how much had changed. The world was still watching, still waiting for the next big move, the next leap into the future. But Elon knew that the greatest leap wasn't about launching the next rocket or creating the next electric car. It was about being the kind of person, and leader, who could inspire others to build a better world together. He had already made his mark on history, but now, he was focused on creating something deeper, a legacy of compassion, collaboration, and sustainability. A legacy that would endure long after the rockets had landed and the cars had driven off into the sunset. And, as the year came to a close, Elon felt a sense of peace he had never known before. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges he couldn't predict. But he was ready to face them, because, this time, he wasn't facing them alone. The holidays had passed, and with the new year came a sense of renewal for Elon Musk. He had kept his promise to himself, he was striving for balance in both his personal and professional life. But as the new year began, so did a fresh wave of challenges. No matter how hard Elon tried, there were still moments when the immense pressure of being the CEO of not one, but two of the most groundbreaking companies in the world, would start to weigh him down. In the midst of all of this, a new crisis began to form. It wasn't just the usual technical issue or delayed project, it was about something far more sensitive: trust. Tesla's new electric truck had been met with widespread enthusiasm, but there were growing concerns about its production capabilities. Tesla had promised that the new model would be available in mass quantities by the end of the year, but some of the suppliers were struggling to meet the deadlines. Elon had built Tesla on the promise of fast, bold progress, but now, there was the very real risk that the company's reputation could be damaged if the truck's release didn't happen on time. Worse still, there were whispers among the employees about the company's internal communication. Some felt that they weren't being given enough updates on the situation, and morale was starting to dip. It wasn't just about deadlines, it was about trust. Elon had worked tirelessly to build Tesla's reputation as a leader in the electric vehicle industry, but now it was clear, trust wasn't something that could be maintained by just pushing people to work harder. Gwynne Shotwell, who had become not just his business partner but a close ally in leadership, called him into her office to discuss the issue. "Elon, we need to address this head-on," she said as she motioned for him to sit down. "I've been getting reports that there are some employees questioning the way things are being communicated within the company. There's a sense of uncertainty. People feel like they're not being kept in the loop, and that's a recipe for disaster. We've been so focused on pushing for innovation, but we've neglected the fact that we need to build trust, both with the public and our team." Elon exhaled, rubbing his forehead. The situation was more complex than he had anticipated. "I know we're up against some tough deadlines. But I didn't realize it had gotten to this point. I've been so wrapped up in the end goal that I missed the signs. I need to do better." Gwynne nodded, understanding the pressure Elon had been under. We all need to do better. The success of this company depends on transparency. We can't just focus on moving fast, we need to make sure we're bringing everyone along with us. Employees need to feel like they have a stake in the success of this company. If they don't, it will hurt us in ways we can't predict. Elon knew she was right. He had always prided himself on being straightforward with his employees, but he had failed to realize that some of his leadership tactics needed to evolve. The stakes had changed. He couldn't just demand results, he needed to inspire confidence and loyalty in those who were working tirelessly behind the scenes to make Tesla's vision a reality. The first step Elon took was to hold an all-hands meeting at Tesla's headquarters. The goal was simple: rebuild trust. He had always been a fan of direct communication, but this time, he knew it was going to require vulnerability, something that didn't come naturally to him. But he also knew it was necessary. The Tesla employees filled the massive conference hall, their faces a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Elon stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of people who had dedicated their time and energy to making his vision of sustainable energy a reality. "Thank you for being here today," Elon began, his voice steady but tinged with sincerity. "I know the past few months have been a roller coaster. We've had incredible successes, but we've also encountered challenges. And for some of you, those challenges have created frustration. I've heard your concerns, and I want to address them head-on." There was a quiet buzz in the room. People exchanged glances, unsure of what to expect next. "I've always believed that progress is a team effort. Tesla wouldn't be what it is without the dedication, the long hours, and the passion of each of you. But I also know that I haven't been as transparent as I should have been," Elon continued, his words ringing with a newfound humility. "I've been focused on pushing the company forward, and in doing so, I've missed the importance of making sure you all understand where we are and where we're headed." The room grew quieter. Employees, many of whom had admired Elon for his boldness, now saw a different side of him, one that was acknowledging the shortfalls, the areas where leadership had failed them. "I'm here today to tell you that we're going to change that. Moving forward, I'll make sure that you're all in the loop. I'll share more of the challenges we're facing, and I'll be open about the tough decisions we have to make. Because you deserve to know. You are the heart of Tesla, and I will work to make sure you always feel valued and included." Elon paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "I can't do this alone," he said, his eyes sweeping across the room. "And I don't want to. We're building something together. And we're going to make sure that every person here feels like they are part of something bigger." There was a long silence after he finished speaking. Then, slowly, the employees began to applaud. It wasn't a raucous cheer, it was more of a quiet acknowledgement of the vulnerability and accountability Elon had shown. Gwyn, who had been standing off to the side, watched with a sense of pride. She knew that Elon's words had been a turning point, not just for the company, but for him as a leader. In the following weeks, Elon and Gwyn worked together to implement new channels of communication within Tesla. Regular town hall meetings were scheduled, where employees could ask questions directly to the leadership team. Transparency became the new focus, and employees began to feel more connected to the company's mission. For Elon, it wasn't just about making Tesla a better company, it was about changing how he led. He was still the visionary, the one pushing the boundaries of what was possible, but now, he had learned the importance of leading with empathy. He understood that trust wasn't just something you earn through results, it was something you built every day with authenticity and care. The electric truck production issues were eventually resolved, and the vehicle was released on time. But the real victory for Elon came from the shift in company culture. Tesla had always been a place of innovation, but now, it was also a place where people felt heard, valued, and part of something much bigger than just the products they were creating. As the year continued, Elon was more committed than ever to rebuilding not just Tesla's trust with the public, but the trust with his employees and, most importantly, with himself. He had learned that true leadership wasn't just about vision, it was about the people who believed in that vision and the trust they placed in him to guide them toward a shared future. And that, in the end, would be the foundation for everything he hoped to achieve. Elon Musk's life, both personal and professional, had always been under a magnifying glass. His companies, SpaceX and Tesla, had reshaped entire industries, making him a global icon of innovation. But it wasn't just his work that attracted attention, it was also his family life. And in recent months, that spotlight had grown brighter, with an added layer of scrutiny surrounding his relationship with his mother, Maye Musk. For years, Maye had been a constant figure in Elon's life. She was the rock on which he had built much of his foundation. A successful model, nutritionist, and dietitian, she had always emphasized the importance of hard work, self-reliance, and resilience. Elon's upbringing, filled with stories of struggle and survival, shaped him into the ambitious person he was today. But recently, the dynamic between them had evolved. Their relationship, once centered on the usual mother-son interactions, had begun to shift into something more collaborative, with Maye's voice increasingly influencing Elon's decisions. It wasn't just about advice anymore, it was about partnership, support, and a shared understanding of the pressures Elon was facing. Maye was a woman of grace and wisdom, and while she had always been supportive of Elon's pursuits, she had recently become even more vocal in her advice. She had always been known for her humor, intelligence, and a keen sense of awareness about the world. Now, her voice was being heard louder than ever in Elon's world. Whether it was offering a new perspective on a business decision or giving him the space to think through personal issues, Maye's influence was undeniable. Elon had begun inviting Maye to his company events, much to the surprise of the media and public. She was no longer a figure in the background but someone who had a direct hand in Elon's life. It wasn't just about the public image, it was about her becoming part of his leadership process. He respected her intellect and her sharp insights into human nature, which often led him to rethink his approach to both business and relationships. But as their shared public appearances became more frequent, it didn't take long for others to start questioning their interactions. Was it simply a family bond, or was there something more beneath the surface? As usual, the media seized upon the opportunity to dissect their relationship, magnifying every moment into something larger than life. One day, an interview with a journalist took a turn that neither Elon nor Maye had anticipated. The reporter, a young woman named Sarah Thompson, was known for her cutting, sometimes sarcastic, approach to interviewing. She had interviewed Elon several times before, and while their discussions were usually cordial, there was always an undercurrent of tension. This time, however, Sarah was focusing on Maye. Sitting across from Elon and Maye in a sleek, modern conference room at Tesla's headquarters, Sarah was visibly smirking as she asked, "Elon, we've seen a lot more of your mother lately, haven't we? It's quite clear she's become a major part of your brand's image. Tell me, is she now your unofficial business partner, or is this just part of the Musk family's growing PR machine?" Maye, always poised, gave a soft smile, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "I've always been involved in my son's life, and he's always welcomed my advice," she said calmly. "But whether I'm a part of his brand or not doesn't matter to me. What matters is that we support each other." But Sarah wasn't satisfied with that answer. She leaned in, her tone almost mockingly playful. "Oh, I'm sure your support means a lot to him, but isn't it a little bit, let's say, odd? A successful entrepreneur and visionary like yourself, Elon, turning to your mother for guidance, especially at this point in your career? Doesn't it seem a bit needy?" The question landed like a slap. Elon's gaze hardened, and for a moment, he considered whether to let the comment slide. His mind flashed to everything he had built, the countless hours, the sacrifices, and the battles he had fought. But it wasn't just about him. It was about his family. His relationship with Maye wasn't just about personal success, it was about mutual respect, something many didn't understand. He took a deep breath, his voice unwavering as he replied, "I don't think you understand, Sarah. My mother has always been a pillar of strength in my life. She supported me through the darkest of times and has never been anything but honest with me. We have a partnership of trust and respect. And if you think that's needy, well, maybe you should reconsider how you define strength." The room fell silent. Maye gave a small nod of approval, a quiet show of support for Elon's response. Sarah's face reddened, but she quickly recovered, shifting the topic to something less personal. But the damage had already been done. The interaction had stirred something in the public eye, and it wasn't long before the media began to buzz with headlines: "Elon Musk's mother is his secret business partner," "Elon Musk's need for his mother exposed," and "Is Maye Musk really running the show?" Despite the media frenzy, Elon didn't back down. He knew that the truth of his relationship with Maye was much deeper than the surface-level analysis being presented. It wasn't about weakness, it was about family. It was about the strength that came from shared history, shared values, and a shared commitment to growth. As the days passed, Elon found himself reflecting on the interview. The public perception of their relationship didn't bother him. It was the first time, in a long while, that he had truly felt defensive of his mother. The media, as always, would try to twist things to fit their narrative. But he knew the truth: his relationship with Maye wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was something that gave him strength. Later that evening, as he sat with Maye over dinner, the tension from the interview lingered in the air. Maye, ever the composed woman, took a sip of her wine and looked at Elon. "Don't let them get to you, darling. They love a scandal, but they don't understand what we share. They can spin their stories, but we know the truth." Elon nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had spent so much of his life pushing forward, moving faster and faster, always focused on the future. But now, in this moment, he was reminded of the power of connection, the strength that came from truly knowing the people in your life, not just in terms of accomplishments or achievements, but as individuals with whom you shared love, trust, and respect. The public could say what they wanted. But Elon knew, in his heart, that his relationship with Maye wasn't just about family, it was about the unbreakable bond that allowed him to rise to new heights. The media couldn't touch that. As the evening wore on, the conversation shifted to other matters: business, family, life. And though the outside world might have seen their relationship as unusual, to Elon and Maye, it was simply a reminder of the unwavering love and partnership that had always been at the core of their lives. The next day, Elon had an interview scheduled with the New York Times. This time, he knew he had to address the situation head-on. He would speak about his relationship with Maye, not in defensive terms, but in a way that would showcase its importance in his life. He had nothing to hide. The truth was far stronger than any narrative the media could spin. The media was relentless. The day after the interview with Sarah Thompson, the headlines continued to pour in, twisting Elon Musk's relationship with his mother into something it wasn't. Critics and commentators, eager to find a crack in his public persona, had seized upon the slightest hint of tension. Headlines read, "Musk's family ties, a CEO or a mama's boy," and "Maye Musk, the unseen hand behind Tesla's success." Elon knew this media frenzy wasn't just about his family, but about pushing him to the edge, testing his resolve. It wasn't new to Elon. Being in the public eye came with constant scrutiny, from questions about his personal life to attacks on his business practices. What bothered him this time, however, wasn't the usual misinterpretation, it was how the world was attempting to diminish his relationship with his mother. It wasn't the needy label that struck him the hardest, but the undermining of something so profoundly valuable. It was personal. The New York Times interview was approaching, and Elon was determined to address the elephant in the room: his bond with Maye. He had already cleared the air with her privately, but now it was time to stand up and correct the public perception. No one could tell the story of his family better than he could. As Elon arrived at the office, a sense of calm came over him. He had prepared. He was no longer going to shy away from answering questions that invaded his personal life. He would meet the press head-on, as he had so many challenges in the past. If the world wanted to question his family dynamics, then let them. He would turn it into something positive. The interview was held in a small, sleek room at Tesla's headquarters in Palo Alto. The New York Times reporter, Michael Bishop, was already seated, his notepad open and ready. There was a moment of polite pleasantries before the conversation shifted to the hot topic on everyone's mind. "So, Elon," Michael began, his voice steady but probing, "there's been a lot of talk about your relationship with your mother, Maye Musk, especially after that interview with Sarah Thompson. Some critics are calling your bond with her, well, a bit too close for comfort. How would you respond to that?" Elon leaned back in his chair, his gaze unwavering. He wasn't going to let this question go unanswered. "I've seen the headlines," Elon started, his voice calm but filled with authority. "I've heard the criticisms. People think it's unusual, even odd, for a grown man in my position to turn to his mother for advice. But what people don't understand is that my relationship with Maye has always been a cornerstone of my success." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the air before continuing. "She's been there for me since the very beginning. When things were tough, when I was building Zip2 and PayPal, she was the one who encouraged me to keep going, even when everyone else doubted me. She taught me the importance of hard work, resilience, and never letting setbacks define you. We've always been close. It's not some PR stunt or a needy relationship. It's a partnership built on mutual respect and a shared commitment to excellence." Michael scribbled something in his notebook but didn't interrupt. Elon could feel the intensity of the conversation, the quiet hum of the media machinery buzzing in the background. It wasn't just about answering the question, it was about making sure the truth was heard. "I think there's a misunderstanding about what strength means," Elon continued, his eyes fixed on Michael. "People often think strength is about doing everything alone, pushing through without relying on anyone. But that's not the kind of strength I believe in. The true strength is in recognizing the people who have always had your back, in knowing that you're not alone in the fight. My mother has always been my sounding board, my biggest supporter, and my most honest critic. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be who I am today." Michael leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as if to gauge the sincerity of Elon's words. He had interviewed countless business moguls, but there was something different in Elon's voice, a vulnerability that was rarely seen from someone of his stature. "Elon, I understand that you have a strong bond with your mother, but do you think there's a risk of being too dependent on that relationship? Does it ever get in the way of your decision-making, especially when it comes to business?" Elon didn't flinch. He had anticipated this line of questioning. "It's not about dependency," he said firmly. "It's about having a strong foundation to stand on. I don't make decisions based on what anyone else thinks. I make decisions based on what I believe is best for the future, for humanity, for the planet. And when I involve Maye in those decisions, it's because I trust her judgment. She's not just my mother, she's a smart, capable woman who knows how to cut through the noise and get to the heart of the matter." There was a pause as Michael absorbed his words. Then, the reporter seemed to soften, sensing that this wasn't just an opportunity to provoke but to understand. "I get it," Michael said. "You're saying that her influence has been vital in shaping who you are as a leader and innovator." "Exactly," Elon replied. "And that's not something I'm going to apologize for. People are entitled to their opinions, but I know the truth of my relationship with Maye, and that's all that matters. She's not just a part of my family. She's a part of my journey." The conversation moved on to other topics: Tesla's next steps, the future of electric cars, SpaceX's plans to reach Mars. But the question about his relationship with Maye lingered in the back of Elon's mind. For the first time in a long while, he had spoken openly about his mother and their partnership, and it felt good to have addressed the misunderstanding head-on. Later that evening, as he was getting ready to leave the office, Elon received a text from Maye. He smiled as he read it. "You did great today, darling. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you have to explain us. I'm proud of you." Her words were exactly what he needed to hear. They reminded him of the simple truth he had always known: the bond they shared was unbreakable. And no matter how much the world tried to dissect it, that bond would remain his source of strength. Elon leaned back in his chair, feeling a rare sense of peace. He had faced the press, faced his critics, and come out stronger. The world might never fully understand his relationship with Maye, but that didn't matter. They were in it together, and nothing, no headline, no journalist, could change that. As he left the office, heading toward the car that would take him home, Elon felt a sense of relief wash over him. The truth had been spoken, and it was now out there for everyone to hear. It wasn't about defending his family. It was about honoring it. And in the end, that was all that really mattered. The aftermath of the interview with the New York Times wasn't what Elon Musk had expected. He had anticipated some backlash, maybe even some negative commentary, but what he hadn't expected was the overwhelmingly positive response from the public. The media, for once, seemed to soften its tone. Headlines like "Elon Musk opens up about his relationship with Maye Musk" and "Elon Musk defends family, a lesson in strength and love" began to replace the sensationalist pieces that had dominated the news cycle just days before. It seemed that people, even those who had been skeptical of him in the past, were starting to understand the depth of his bond with his mother. For once, the media had inadvertently created a story that reflected not just his success, but his humanity. And as the press coverage slowed down, Elon began to feel a sense of relief that he hadn't felt in a long time. But it wasn't just the media that took notice. His employees, too, had picked up on his stance. Elon wasn't one to openly discuss his personal life in the workplace. His employees were used to the relentless pace of the Tesla and SpaceX operations. But after the interview, there was a noticeable shift. People began to speak to him with a renewed respect, as if they had seen a side of him they hadn't known existed. One afternoon, during a routine meeting at Tesla, a senior engineer named Ryan approached him with a hesitant look on his face. Elon was used to the pressure of business meetings, but Ryan seemed different today, almost as if he wanted to say something important. "Mr. Musk," Ryan began, "I just wanted to say thank you for what you said about your mom. I've been working here for 5 years, and I've never really seen you open up like that. It's inspiring to see someone in your position stand up for their family like that." Elon was taken aback, but then he smiled. He had never expected such a direct reaction from someone in his company, especially not from the engineers who usually kept to themselves. "Thanks, Ryan," Elon replied. "Family is everything. We don't get where we are without those who support us." Ryan nodded. "I think it resonated with a lot of us. It's easy to get lost in the work, to focus only on the big picture. But sometimes, it's the people close to you that keep you grounded, keep you going when things get tough." Elon thought about that for a moment. It was true. Tesla and SpaceX were built on innovation and ambition, but the drive to succeed could only go so far. It was the people in his life, the ones who believed in him, who had truly shaped his journey. Later that day, as Elon was sitting in his office, his mind wandered back to Maye. After all the public scrutiny, the challenges, and the media chaos, he realized just how vital she was to his success, not just as a mother, but as a guiding force in his life. He could feel the weight of her support behind every decision, every move he made. Even though she wasn't always physically by his side, her presence in his life was a constant. But things weren't all smooth sailing. The press may have softened their stance, but there were still whispers behind closed doors. Some investors were uneasy with the idea that Elon's personal life had suddenly become such a central part of his public persona. They were used to him being seen as a genius entrepreneur who thrived on disruption, not as a man with a close-knit family dynamic. The boardroom discussions, while still focused on Tesla and SpaceX's trajectory, often lingered on the perception of Elon's leadership style. Was he becoming too emotional? Too sentimental? Elon couldn't help but wonder what those critics would say if they truly understood the complexities of his life. His connection with Maye wasn't just a family bond, it was the product of years of mutual respect, hard work, and shared dreams. It wasn't something that could be easily understood by those who didn't see the foundation they had built together. Later that week, Elon received a message from his brother, Kimball. It was short, but to the point. "I saw the interview. I'm proud of you for defending Mom. Keep being real." Elon smiled, his heart swelling a little. Kimball, more than anyone, understood the dynamics of their family. They had both witnessed the sacrifices Maye had made throughout their childhoods. They had seen her rise through hardships, never faltering in her love or commitment to them. Elon appreciated that his brother had always supported him, but even more so when it came to family. Kimball had always understood the bigger picture. It wasn't long before Elon and Kimball found time to meet in person. The Musk brothers hadn't always been close in the way some siblings were, but their bond was strong, built on a shared history and a mutual understanding of what it meant to grow up in their household. "Glad to see the interview didn't send you into hiding," Kimball teased as they sat down for a meal at one of their favorite restaurants in Austin. "I had to get out in front of it," Elon said, picking up his glass of water. "I didn't want anyone to turn something important into a headline just for clicks. People don't realize that Maye's been the one constant in my life. She's been my anchor." Kimball nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "Yeah, I get it. We all owe a lot to her. But you know what I think is interesting? That moment you had with the reporter, standing up for her like that, it was the first time in a while that I've seen you get personal with the world. Usually, you keep everything so close to the chest." Elon chuckled. "Guess I figured it was time to let people see the real story. Everyone's so focused on the Musk brand, they forget it's not just about the work. It's about the people who make it all possible." Kimball raised his glass. "To family, then." "To family," Elon echoed. The days that followed brought new challenges, as they always did. Tesla's stock continued to rise, SpaceX launched its latest mission to the International Space Station, and the world kept turning. But Elon felt something inside him shift. It wasn't just about the next big project or the next ambitious plan, it was about staying true to the people who mattered most. Maye, Kimball, and his children were his true north. And as the world continued to watch him, he knew that no matter the headlines, no matter the critics, he had one thing the world couldn't take away: his family. Their support was the foundation of everything he had accomplished, and it was something that would always keep him grounded. As Elon looked out the window of his office that evening, the setting sun casting a golden hue across the horizon, he thought about the future. It was uncertain, as always. But one thing was clear: no matter where the road took him, he would always have the love and strength of those closest to him to keep moving forward. The story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. While the public response to Elon's interview had been largely supportive, the reality of being in the spotlight was never as straightforward as it seemed. Despite the applause, a deeper, less visible struggle began to unfold behind the scenes. The weight of the ongoing media attention had started to take its toll. Elon wasn't one to admit when he was feeling the pressure, but those closest to him could tell. The constant headlines about his family dynamics, the relentless stream of questions about his relationship with Maye, and the expectations to always be the perfect CEO had begun to gnaw at him. His days were filled with back-to-back meetings, conference calls, and endless emails. But in between it all, Elon found himself retreating into the solitude of his office more often than usual. He could feel the exhaustion creeping in. Kimball, ever the attentive brother, had noticed the subtle changes. He'd always been the one to encourage Elon to take breaks, to step away from work and let himself recharge. But Elon was a man who thrived on progress, on pushing boundaries, and the idea of slowing down seemed counterintuitive to his nature. One evening, Kimball dropped by Elon's office after a long day of meetings at Tesla. He knocked softly on the door before entering, finding Elon hunched over his desk, scribbling notes on a whiteboard, deep in thought. "Hey, man. How's it going?" Kimball asked casually, though he already knew the answer. Elon didn't look up right away. He paused for a moment, then sighed and leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. It's been a lot. The last few weeks have been a blur. Kimball nodded, taking a seat across from him. I get it. It's all piling up, huh? The media, the pressure, everything. You don't have to handle it alone. Elon shook his head, his eyes focused on the cluttered desk in front of him. I know. But sometimes it feels like I do. People expect me to have all the answers, to keep pushing forward, like there's no room for doubt or weakness. And if I show too much vulnerability, they'll tear me apart. Kimball leaned forward, his tone serious. You can't be Superman all the time, Elon. It's okay to have moments when you're not 100% on top of everything. And that's why you have family. We've got your back, no matter what. Elon sat silently for a moment, letting his brother's words sink in. He had always prided himself on being resilient, never showing weakness to the world. But lately, it felt like the weight of it all, running multiple companies, managing public perception, and trying to balance his personal life, was becoming too much to bear. The door to the office creaked open again, and Maye Musk entered with a soft smile on her face. Elon looked up, his expression softening at the sight of her. Are you two talking about me again? She teased, crossing the room to give Elon a quick hug. Elon chuckled, his shoulders relaxing. Maybe a little. Maye sat down beside him, her calm presence a grounding force. You know, darling, you don't have to carry all of this alone. It's not a sign of weakness to lean on those who care about you. Kimball's right, you have a family who loves you, no matter how many headlines there are. Elon took a deep breath, feeling a rare sense of relief. His mother's words were always a source of comfort, but hearing them now felt particularly reassuring. I know, Elon admitted, his voice low. But sometimes, it feels like the world is just waiting for me to fail. And the more I share, the more vulnerable I become. It's hard to not feel like I'm giving them ammunition to use against me. Maye reached over and placed a gentle hand on his. The world doesn't define you, Elon. The people who love you, the ones who truly know you, those are the ones who matter. You've already achieved so much, and you've done it by staying true to yourself. Don't let the noise drown out what really matters. Elon looked at her, the weight of her words hitting him in a way that he hadn't expected. His mother had always been a pillar of strength in his life, and her belief in him had been unwavering. It was a reminder he desperately needed, especially in moments like this when the pressure was suffocating. He felt a shift in his mindset. The constant battle with public perception, the weight of the world's expectations, it could all wait. What truly mattered was the foundation that had supported him through everything, his family. He wasn't alone in this, no matter how isolating it sometimes felt. I guess I've been so caught up in everything that I forgot to take a step back, Elon said, his voice thoughtful. I've been pushing so hard that I lost sight of the things that really keep me grounded. I don't have to do it all by myself. Kimball smiled, the tension in the room easing. Exactly. And remember, you don't have to make decisions in a vacuum. You've got a team, a real team, not just at work, but at home, too. We're here for you, no matter what. Maye leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. You're not just a CEO, Elon. You're our son, our brother, and a father. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Let us help you bear it. As the conversation continued, Elon felt a sense of peace settle over him. The weight of the world was still there, but for the first time in a long while, he realized that he didn't have to carry it alone. His family, his mother, his brother, and his children, were the anchors he needed. They were the ones who would help him navigate the storm, not by taking on the work, but by providing him with the strength to keep going. Later that evening, as Elon lay in bed, he found himself reflecting on the conversation. His thoughts were no longer consumed by the constant barrage of media attention or the pressure of his next big move. For the first time in weeks, he felt lighter. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure, as long as he had the support of his family, he would be ready to face whatever came his way. The next day, Elon decided to take a break, a small but significant step. Instead of heading straight to the office, he spent the morning with his children, enjoying a quiet breakfast. They played, laughed, and shared stories, and for those few hours, the world outside seemed to fade away. In those moments, he realized that no amount of success or recognition could replace the joy of being present with the people he loved. The world might continue to watch his every move, but now, more than ever, he understood that the most important thing was the love and support of the people who had been with him from the start. No matter how big the challenges became, he would face them, not as the isolated genius the world sometimes saw him as, but as a man surrounded by the ones who mattered most. And that, he thought, was enough to keep him going. As Elon Musk continued to process the whirlwind of public reaction to the interview, his world shifted in ways he hadn't anticipated. Despite his resolve to focus on his family, the pressures of leading multiple companies never ceased. Tesla's stock was skyrocketing, SpaceX was making unprecedented advances, and yet, for all the success, Elon felt as though something important was slipping through his fingers. The new challenge wasn't just external, it was internal. Elon realized that while he had always been driven by ambition, the conversation with his family had sparked something deeper within him, a desire for balance. For years, his life had been an unrelenting race toward the next big goal, the next milestone. But now, as he stood on the precipice of even greater achievements, he couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was missing. The balance between work and life seemed impossible to achieve. That morning, as he sat in his office at SpaceX, he stared at his computer screen, the glowing text of the latest SpaceX launch schedule staring back at him. There were plans for Mars missions, new rocket developments, and even the goal of building a city on the red planet. There was no shortage of work to do. But for the first time, he found it hard to focus. The ambition that had once driven him was now intertwined with a sense of doubt and confusion about where his life was headed. His phone rang, snapping him out of his reverie. It was Kimball. "Hey, Elon. You free for a quick chat?" Elon picked up the phone, his voice a little tired. "Yeah, what's up?" "I've been thinking about our conversation the other night," Kimball said, his tone light but serious. "And I know you're juggling a lot right now, but I think we both know you can't just keep running like this without a break. It's going to catch up with you, man." Elon exhaled slowly. "I know. I've been trying to figure out how to balance everything. I feel like I'm at a crossroads. If I don't keep pushing, I might lose the momentum I've built. But if I keep pushing like this, I'll burn out. It's hard to know what the right move is." Kimball was quiet for a moment before speaking again. "What if the right move isn't about pushing harder? What if it's about stepping back for a bit, seeing the bigger picture? Maybe it's time for you to focus on what really matters, your family, your health, your peace of mind." Elon ran a hand through his hair, the weight of the decision beginning to settle in. He had always been about constant progress, pushing forward, breaking through barriers. But maybe Kimball was right. Maybe it was time to reassess. For the first time, he wondered if his drive for progress had left him disconnected from the parts of life that mattered most. "Thanks, Kimball. I'll think about it," Elon said softly. The call ended, but Elon couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. He looked at the pictures of his children on his desk, his heart aching as he thought about how little time he had spent with them lately. They were growing up so fast, and he was missing so much. The last thing he wanted was for them to look back and remember him as a distant figure, a man obsessed with his work, leaving no room for them. As he sat in his office, the clock ticking steadily in the background, Elon realized that he couldn't keep living on autopilot. He needed to make a choice. But how? And what would that choice mean for the companies he had poured his soul into? Would stepping back to prioritize his family make him a lesser leader in the eyes of the world? His thoughts were interrupted when he received a text from Maye. It simply read, "I know things are hectic, but remember to take time for yourself, Elon. We're here, always." The simplicity of the message made him pause. He had been so caught up in trying to fix everything, to keep up with the relentless pace of the world, that he had forgotten the most basic truth: he didn't have to do it all alone. His family wasn't just there for him during the highs, they were there in the lows, too. After reading Maye's text, Elon decided it was time to take action. It was time to step back for a bit, not from his work entirely, but from the relentless cycle of non-stop hustle. He needed to rediscover his sense of purpose, one that didn't solely depend on the validation of success or public opinion. His mission, his work, and his legacy were important, but they weren't the only things that defined him. A few days later, Elon announced to his executive team that he would be taking some time off, a rare decision for someone so dedicated to his companies. He made it clear that he wouldn't be abandoning Tesla or SpaceX, but rather stepping back to reassess and recharge. The announcement sent waves of shock through his teams. People had always seen Elon as someone who pushed relentlessly, rarely taking a step back. The idea of him taking time off, even temporarily, was almost unheard of. But to Elon, it felt like the right decision. The first thing he did was take his children on a trip to the mountains, a quiet retreat where they could bond without the distractions of technology and work. It was just him, his kids, and the vastness of nature. For the first time in months, he felt a sense of calm that he hadn't realized he was missing. As they hiked through the trails, played games by the campfire, and shared quiet moments, Elon's mind began to clear. The noise that had once consumed him, the pressure to perform, to succeed, to be the best, faded into the background. What was left was a simple truth: this was what mattered most. His family, his health, and the joy of spending time with the people who truly mattered. One evening, while sitting on a large rock overlooking a tranquil lake, his son Xander turned to him and asked, "Dad, why do you work so much?" Elon smiled, his heart swelling with love for his children. "Well, buddy, I work because I believe in making the world a better place. But what I've realized is that I also need to make time for the people I love. You guys are the most important part of my life. And I don't ever want to forget that." Xander smiled, his innocence offering Elon a sense of peace he hadn't known he was seeking. That night, as they lay under the stars, Elon felt a rare sense of gratitude. For the first time in a long while, he was able to just be. No expectations, no deadlines, just a man with his family, in the midst of nature, rediscovering what truly mattered. Elon Musk had spent so much of his life chasing the future, but in that moment, he realized that the present was just as important. Elon Musk had always been a man of action, constantly thinking ahead, always looking to the future. Yet, in the serene solitude of the mountains, away from the ever-present buzz of his companies and the noise of the media, he began to reflect in ways he hadn't allowed himself to before. As the days stretched on during his retreat, he found himself more and more attuned to the simpler, more meaningful moments that he had long neglected. One evening, as he sat by the campfire with his children, telling them stories of his adventures in the tech world, Elon felt a stirring within himself. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on their faces as the wind rustled through the trees. His kids listened intently, their eyes wide, but what struck him most wasn't their attention to his tales of rockets and cars. It was the way they looked at him, like he was more than just the tech mogul they saw in the media. He had been so consumed by his work for so long that he had forgotten the impact his presence, his time, could have on them. His kids, Xander and Nevada, didn't care about his next big invention. They cared about the time he spent with them. They cared about his laughter, his stories, and his love. It was a revelation. Elon realized he had been chasing success, but perhaps he had overlooked what success truly meant. It wasn't about breaking records or sending rockets to Mars. It was about being present, about sharing moments that would last a lifetime. The breakthrough moments in his companies were important, but the breakthrough moment he was having in his personal life was far more valuable. As the days passed, he began to recognize something else as well: the importance of vulnerability. For years, Elon had built a public persona that portrayed him as indestructible. He was the genius inventor, the visionary leader who never faltered. But in this quiet mountain retreat, surrounded by the love of his family, he realized that true strength didn't come from never showing weakness. It came from acknowledging it and allowing himself to grow through it. One afternoon, as they hiked to the top of a hill overlooking a breathtaking valley, Elon and Kimball found themselves walking side by side, taking in the views. The silence between them was comfortable, neither of them feeling the need to speak. Finally, Kimball broke the silence. "Elon, I'm really proud of you for taking this time off. I know it's not easy for you." Elon turned to him, his expression thoughtful. "I don't think I realized how badly I needed it, Kimball. For so long, I thought that pushing harder and harder would bring me closer to some sort of fulfillment. But now, I'm not so sure." Kimball smiled. "That's the thing, right? You're never really going to get everything right. But when you focus on the right things, the people who love you, the moments that matter, that's when everything starts to make sense." Elon nodded slowly. "I've been so focused on the next big thing, on getting everything perfect, that I lost sight of the present. The real work, the work that truly matters, is about creating something lasting. And I'm realizing that means more than just my companies. It means being there for my family. For my kids." As they reached the top of the hill, the valley below stretching out like an endless sea of green and blue, Elon felt a deep sense of peace. The quiet of the moment contrasted sharply with the usual chaos of his life, but in that stillness, he saw everything more clearly than he ever had before. "I think I've been so scared of failure in my professional life," Elon admitted, his voice soft, "that I forgot to embrace the possibility of failure in my personal life. I've been trying to control everything, but I think it's time to accept that I can't." Kimball put a hand on his brother's shoulder, offering silent support. The days that followed were transformative for Elon. He returned to his companies with a renewed sense of clarity, but also with a plan to make changes, not just in his work but in his personal life as well. He would still push boundaries, but he would also embrace the quiet moments. He would still strive for progress, but he would do it with a new understanding of what success truly meant. One afternoon, after returning home, Elon sat down with Maye, Xander, and Nevada in their living room. The house was quiet, but there was a warmth that filled the space, an undeniable sense of connection that he hadn't fully appreciated in years. He looked around at his family, each of them immersed in their own activities, and he felt a surge of gratitude. "I've been thinking a lot," Elon said, breaking the comfortable silence. "About how I can be more present. Not just for my companies, but for you all. You matter more to me than anything else in this world." Maye looked up, her eyes soft with affection. "We know, Elon. You've always worked hard to make the world a better place. But now, it's time to focus on making our world better. Here. With us." Elon smiled, feeling the weight of his decisions lighten. He had spent so much of his life thinking about the future, but he was finally starting to appreciate the present. He wasn't perfect, and he didn't have all the answers, but he was learning. Learning how to prioritize his well-being, his relationships, and his sense of purpose. It wasn't just about building rockets anymore. It was about building memories with his children. It was about being there for the people who had been there for him all along. That night, as they gathered around the dinner table, Elon realized that this was his real mission. His success wasn't just about the companies he built or the innovations he introduced to the world, it was about the legacy he left behind in the lives of the people he loved. And with that, Elon Musk was beginning to discover a new kind of balance, a balance between ambition and presence, between the future and the present, between work and family. Elon Musk's decision to take a step back from his relentless pace of work had a ripple effect that reached beyond just his personal life. As the media buzzed with speculation about his sudden shift in priorities, his companies, Tesla and SpaceX, experienced their own challenges. Rumors circulated that the visionary leader was losing his edge, that perhaps the man who had revolutionized the electric vehicle industry and pioneered the dream of space travel was finally bowing out. But what the public didn't see was the quiet transformation happening behind the scenes. As Elon took more time with his family, something profound began to shift within him. He was learning that leadership wasn't just about solving problems and making big decisions, it was also about guiding those around you to become better versions of themselves. His approach to leadership, both in his personal life and at his companies, was evolving, and the effects would soon become evident. Elon spent the next few weeks carefully balancing his time. While he wasn't stepping away from his companies entirely, he began delegating more responsibilities to trusted colleagues and managers. He empowered his team members to make decisions without his constant oversight. This shift in focus wasn't about abandoning his companies, it was about trusting the people around him to step up, to take ownership, and to lead in ways that he once had to. At Tesla, the executives saw the change in direction. Elon's decision to let others lead, to give them the autonomy to make key decisions, was a bold move. It also proved to be a critical one. As Elon stepped back, his executive team stepped forward, taking on more responsibility than ever before. The results were immediate, projects that had stalled suddenly began to gain traction, and innovative ideas began to flourish. One of the most notable shifts came in the form of a new product line at Tesla. Without Elon's constant oversight, the team, empowered by his trust, developed a groundbreaking new technology that was far beyond what Elon himself had initially envisioned. The new product, an energy storage solution designed for residential use, was a hit. It would go on to redefine how people thought about sustainable energy in the home. But the success of this new product wasn't just about the technology, it was about leadership. By stepping back, Elon had created a space for his team to grow, to take risks, and to innovate in ways they never had before. It became clear to everyone involved that the success of his companies wasn't dependent on Elon being in every room, making every decision. It was about the collective strength of a team working together, trusting one another, and leading with purpose. At SpaceX, a similar transformation was taking place. With Elon spending more time focusing on his family and his own well-being, he entrusted more of the decision-making to Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president and COO. Gwynne, known for her strong leadership and operational expertise, had long been the backbone of SpaceX's success. Now, with more autonomy, she was able to push the company even further, leading it to new heights. Under her guidance, SpaceX achieved milestones that Elon had only dreamed of: advanced reusable rocket technology that reduced the cost of space travel, new partnerships with international space agencies, and, perhaps most importantly, new public interest in space exploration. But while the companies were flourishing, Elon's personal growth was equally remarkable. With each passing day, he felt more connected to his family, more aware of what he had once taken for granted. He and May began taking long walks together, talking about everything and nothing. The weight of their conversations was less about the future of the world and more about the present moments they were sharing. One evening, as they walked under the stars, Elon turned to May, his voice soft. "I've spent so much of my life focusing on the future," he said, "but I'm starting to realize that the future is built on the foundation of the present. And I've been neglecting that foundation." May smiled, her eyes warm with understanding. "It's never too late to rebuild, Elon. Sometimes the most important moments in life aren't the ones that make headlines, they're the ones that happen in quiet spaces, with the people we love." Elon nodded, a deep sense of peace settling over him. He had always been known for his drive, his single-minded pursuit of success. But now, he understood that the path to true fulfillment was not just about reaching the top of the mountain, it was about enjoying the view along the way, and making sure the people you loved were there with you. The next big test for Elon came when the media caught wind of his recent changes. His decision to step back from the daily grind, to let his team lead, and to prioritize his family sent shockwaves through the industry. There were questions about his future at Tesla and SpaceX. Would he remain the leader of these companies, or was he preparing to step away from it all? What would happen to the visionaries who had always followed him if he wasn't there to lead them? At first, the questions were uncomfortable. Elon wasn't used to being questioned about his leadership in this way. But he quickly realized that the shift he was going through was just as important as any technological breakthrough. If his companies were truly sustainable, they had to be able to thrive without him. His role, he now understood, was not just to build the future, it was to empower others to do the same. He sat down for an interview with the press, something he hadn't done in months. The questions were pointed, and the reporters were eager to know if he was stepping down or if the future of his companies was in jeopardy. "I'm not stepping away," Elon said, his voice calm but firm. "But I am changing how I lead. For years, I've been at the forefront of every decision, and while that's served us well, it's also been a strain. I've realized that leadership isn't about doing everything yourself, it's about giving others the space to lead and to grow." The reporters were taken aback, not expecting this level of openness from Elon. But what struck them most was his sincerity. He wasn't just talking about leadership, he was living it. His ability to pivot, to trust those around him, and to grow alongside them was a testament to the kind of leader he had become. Elon's message was clear: the future of Tesla and SpaceX wasn't about him. It was about the people he had surrounded himself with, the innovators who shared his vision, and the teams who were carrying that vision forward. As the months passed, the transformation within Elon deepened. He wasn't just a businessman or a visionary anymore, he was a father, a brother, and a friend. He had found a balance, a new rhythm that allowed him to be present in ways he hadn't been before. And in doing so, he realized that the true measure of success wasn't the number of rockets launched or the amount of money made, it was the relationships that lasted, the memories that were created, and the lives that were impacted. Elon Musk had always been about breaking boundaries, but now he was learning that some of the most important boundaries to break were the ones within himself. The months following Elon's retreat were a period of significant reflection and recalibration, both for him and for those who had been watching from the sidelines. It became increasingly clear that he had gone through a transformation far more profound than just stepping back from his daily responsibilities. He had reached a crossroads not only in his professional life but also in his personal journey. The first signs of this shift were seen not in flashy headlines or record-breaking technological feats, but in the subtle changes within the dynamics at Tesla and SpaceX. Elon had made a conscious decision to embrace the power of delegation, of nurturing his team to take on more responsibility, and of focusing his energy on areas where he could add value, not by micromanaging, but by inspiring and guiding them. The effects were nothing short of remarkable. At Tesla, the leadership transition proved to be far more successful than many had anticipated. Elon had once been the face of innovation for the company, but now, under the guidance of CEO Robin Denholm, the team had grown into its own. Robin, whose leadership was marked by both efficiency and empathy, had taken the company to new heights. With Elon's newfound trust in his team, Tesla's projects, previously stalled or moving slowly, began to gather momentum. Tesla's new energy storage system, which Elon had once seen as a side project, now became one of the key drivers for the company's growth. Under Robin's stewardship, the product expanded into new markets, offering an affordable solution for sustainable energy at a time when the world needed it most. The decision to empower others allowed Elon to see that true leadership was about building a strong foundation of people who shared his mission, even if they didn't all share his exact vision. At SpaceX, the changes were no less striking. Gwynne Shotwell, now fully in command of SpaceX's operations, continued to push the envelope on what the company could achieve in the realm of space exploration. With the added responsibility, SpaceX secured several new high-profile contracts with both private and government entities, positioning themselves as the world's foremost space transportation company. Their Starship program, once a distant dream, had made incredible strides under Gwynne's direction. And as SpaceX embarked on its journey to Mars, something Elon had dreamed about for decades, he found himself more of a supporter than a leader on the front lines. His role was no longer that of the relentless innovator trying to do everything himself, but of a guiding hand that steered the ship when it was needed most. He had built the foundations of these companies, but now, it was time for them to grow and evolve without him holding their every move. However, Elon's retreat had a deeper effect on him personally. As he spent more time with his family, he came to appreciate the nuances of the moments he had previously overlooked. He laughed more freely, relaxed more easily, and found joy in the simplest of things, watching his kids grow, having heartfelt conversations with Maye, and being present for the milestones that mattered. But despite these changes, there was still one final test ahead: his public image. The press had followed his every move during the retreat, often questioning whether he had lost his edge or was simply too distracted by his personal life to continue being a leader. For a man who had built his identity on being the visionary who changed the world, this was a challenge that couldn't be ignored. The day came when Elon decided it was time to address the public once and for all. A highly anticipated press conference was scheduled in Los Angeles, and the world waited to hear from him. What would the billionaire entrepreneur say? Would he reaffirm his commitment to Tesla and SpaceX, or would he step away from the public spotlight for good? The press conference was held at Tesla's headquarters, and as the reporters gathered, Elon walked onto the stage, his posture calm and composed. The room fell silent as he approached the podium. "Thank you all for being here," Elon began, his voice steady. "I know that over the past few months, there has been a lot of speculation about my future, about what my role at Tesla, SpaceX, and my other ventures might look like moving forward. And I want to clear the air, not just for you, but for myself and for the people who have supported me along the way." The reporters sat forward, eager for answers. "I'm not stepping away from my companies," Elon continued. "But I've realized that leadership is not about doing everything yourself. It's about trust. It's about giving the people around you the freedom to lead. I've spent years focusing on the future, on changing the world, but what I've come to understand is that leadership is about creating a foundation that will outlast me." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "When I first started Tesla and SpaceX, I was driven by the idea that I had to do it all. But now, I've seen that the most important thing I can do is to help others achieve their potential. I've worked with incredible people at both companies, and I've watched them take risks, innovate, and lead in ways I never could have imagined. And that makes me proud. I've realized that I don't need to be at the center of everything for it to succeed." Elon's words were met with a mix of surprise and admiration. He wasn't denying his role in the company's success, but he was acknowledging the need for others to take on more responsibility, to step up, and to lead in their own ways. "My focus is now on being present for my family, and continuing to support my teams from a place of trust and guidance," he concluded. "I believe that by stepping back, I've given myself, and the people around me, the space to grow." As he left the stage, a wave of relief washed over him. The weight of the world, or at least the weight of public expectation, had lifted. The decision to share his vulnerability, to admit that leadership wasn't about being everywhere at once, had taken a huge burden off his shoulders. He had nothing left to prove. In the weeks that followed, the press and public took to his words with a renewed sense of respect. Elon wasn't just a tech mogul or a visionary anymore. He was a father, a brother, a friend, a man who had not only transformed industries but had also transformed himself. His companies continued to thrive, not because he was in control of every detail, but because he had entrusted his teams to drive the vision forward. Elon Musk had come full circle. He had learned that the most meaningful success in life wasn't about conquering new frontiers in technology or business, it was about making space for others to lead, for family to grow, and for himself to finally be at peace. As he sat down to dinner with Maye, Xander, and Nevada, the laughter of his family filling the room, Elon knew that this was the real success, the quiet moments that truly mattered. And for the first time in a long time, he was content. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?